and life.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Virtual Belcar here on YouTube for round 3 of the Virtual Belcar Series 2022. My name is Hesse Römer, and I'm joined by the brilliant Edward May in the comms booth for tonight. And we're in for a good one indeed here, Edward. It's been brilliant every time we've had the Belcar field visiting here at Le Mans, and I'm thinking that it'll be absolutely no less for tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Hester. And yes, welcome everyone to round 3 of the virtual Belcar. We are here at Le Mans, a wonderful, legendary race circuit here in France. The race circuit, when you think of motor racing, this one does inevitably spring to mind with the 24 hours of Le Mans. Just seeing a fair few times come through onto the boards and a few little things here and there on our timing software. For me, I've got Stefan... the host for there in the tracks is by JWS team. We're currently showing up in BLC 3, even though he does find himself 8th in BLC 1. There's a lot of different things going on there. For some reason, he's in a Lamborghini, but on the bottom there, you can see he is in what appears to be a Aston Martin, but his class is in BLC, but BLC 3 is somehow shot above everything else, which is a little bit strange. We will try and get that sorted out, because I can tell you that currently top of BLC 3 is Fabrice Cornelis there for Simtag E-Team, the team number 2 car that managed a very good victory last time out at Watkins Glen. And going through to talk about Watkins Glen, so it was a very exciting race, and it's going to be a tough act to follow because there was drama right the way from the beginning until the end there, and fingers crossed we get more of the same here tonight. If Hasselrömer is there, which he doesn't seem to be for some reason. So I will,
apologies. My apologies, Edward. I was just fixing up my microphone before and must have let the mute button on. Anyways, I think we will be in for an absolutely brilliant one here tonight. I think it's been a tendency every time the field has come around, as I said before. And with the 4 classes of cars that are racing in the virtual Belcar series, it's going to be a very, very busy track out there in terms of traffic. And a lot of different speeds to sort of gather in. And add to that none of these classes are really what you would traditionally race here at Le Mans, which means that a lot of the drivers are having to adjust their braking points, adjust their lines, their turning points, and all these stuff, all these different details that makes for a quite a different lap than in the LMP 1s and 2s, and of course GTEs as well, that all do have quite a lot more downforce than any of the cars on track here tonight. I think we're going to be in for a great one indeed. I'm just going to go over the championship standings in a short moment. Actually, let's just do that now. At the head of the field, Edward, an Arch competition in that number 1 car, currently on provisional pole as well, by about a second. Of course, it's not a country mile here at the moment. It's going to take quite the lap for anyone to get at that point here in the final, 7.5 minutes of qualifying. Valkyrie, though, is close, just 4 points off, so it could still be good for them. Sim District Vibe eSports is 3rd with 31 points, and then SimWorld.be Fast, 27 points in 4th place.
Just having a look through the action out on track, you can see, of course, Fabrice Cornelis leading the BLC 3 class, in behind with the TCR there of, I believe that to be Corentin Guinez for AC Motorsport Esports AM, who is currently leading BLC 4. I was going into this round thinking this is probably going to be a track that is going to favour the Audis, and it certainly seems to be the case here. Meanwhile, in BLC 1, this man, Jimmy Tunes, is currently on provisional pole position, just got held up slightly by the Hyundai of, I believe that was Stefan Kadamans B Sim Racing by FRT. Jimmy Tunes comes back out on track, is going to have basically one final attempt to slap it on pole position, and I think decides enough is enough. Maybe giving way to his teammate there or popping out of the session. He seems to be satisfied with that lap, and why wouldn't you be when you're nearly a second clear of second place? Jonathan Poulet now in second place, just improving his time slightly as we wait for Sandy Mitchell to complete his outlap and get one final charge on for pole position. Interestingly, Hasta, I was watching some of the practice sessions and it did look to be relatively close up in front based on just pure race pace, but I think qualifying, it seems to be on our competition with a slight edge, which is I think what we've seen all season long.
Yeah, and no real surprises there when you look at the sort of quality involved with that team in the end there. Although it seems Valkyrie will be up there as well. That 77 car has been quick. Sandy Mitchell here. I'll tell you what, Edward, you don't see this often, but a C-rated driver with a 6.3 KI rating. As race control checks in as well. Sandy Mitchell here has done a very, very decent time to better Olivier Bultink. Was there in fourth as well. A lot of Lamborghinis here. They seem to be just that tiny bit quicker than the Audis. Although, of course, very, very similar, you could say, on build. I think as we've touched on before in this series. Let's have a look at the BLC2 Porsche Cup machines. I think we're going to have some interesting dynamics between the BLC1 and BLC2 machines here tonight, Edward, because they're not all that far off pace of one another. We see about a second, actually, from the current slowest Lamborghini to the quickest Porsche here. The time is set by Joel Erlenbrook, 4 minutes, 2 seconds. 0.93. But with the top speed advantage of the Porsche Cup cars, the lower drag, and the very similar power to the GT3 machines, we could see for some interesting stuff here, at least over the opening laps of the race. I don't think they're going to last down through the Porsche curves and the opening sector through Dunlop, down through the S's, and through Tete Rouge. The GT3 machines are going to make up bucket loads of time. But it's going to be interesting on lap 1, that's for sure. And if anyone picks up damage or if somehow off pace of the GT3s, we could see things come in together as well. And actually, in that regard, the BLC 3 and 4 cars aren't much more than 5 seconds off of one another either. It seems, though, that with the GT4s have become a little bit quicker overall in recent times here.
Yeah, I think Arisa made a few tweaks to the balance of performance there, and we can see that there are definite improvements in the pace of these GT4s compared to the TCRs. I think that is as well because of what iRacing calls the, I believe, Michelin Pilot Challenge, which is based off of the real-life counterpart, the IMSA counterpart in the real world, and they have managed to do a few tweaks there to the cars just to make sure that the pace differential is enough that the GT4s can quickly pass the slower TCRs without too much hassle. Just coming through the final couple of chicanes now. We're following Robbie Janssens, who slowed up a little bit just to get enough of a margin to get one final stab at pole position in class. Currently a little ways off, around about a second or so shy of fastest car, which is, interestingly enough, the Arnage Competition 100 BMW, which, I mean, we haven't really seen that BMW properly up to pace yet. It's showed a few flashes here and there, but if there was ever going to be a circuit that this BMW was going to do well, it had to be Le Mans. It's so good off of acceleration. Really good down the straight, struggles through the corners, so the Porsche curves could be something to look out for Arnage Competition. But I mean, it's great to see a BMW that's definitely not the favoured car in that class doing well.
Yeah, definitely, and it's been brilliant to see Oh, that's the Arnage car, I think, followed closely by the 77 coming through on Thomas Robin. Robert of AC Motorsports, eSports, and the 188 machine here. Quickest in qualifying so far by 800ths of a second. Quicker than our, should I say, regular hotshot driver here, Nicolas Rubelar. Oh, it takes a lot of track there. And I wonder if that was too much, or it probably, that CCR machine, Edward's going to be able to deal with it just fine in the end. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. I think he got away with that one there, Hassie. You know, I think he was just about within the confines of the track, as we see as well. We haven't really seen many of them, but there are Audis here as well in the BLC1 class. This is Kenny Hermans, who does eventually set a lap time, goes 8th fastest in class. Says 7th, but that's because Stefan Verhofstadt. There we go. Verhofstadt there. Just for some reason is showing up in the incorrect class. Hopefully we can get that rectified and sorted out before the race starts. I think it might have been an error signing up with the wrong car, because that tracks by JWS entry, I think, was an Aston Martin.
Yeah, that's quite possible, and that's what we saw as well. I see he's signed in as a BLC3 machine. I'll have him switched to BLC1 on the class here, and we might just have to live with the looking at the Aston. It's the quick reload of it, and then at least now he shows up where he should.
There we go. All sorted. Quick on the
fingers. It still shows
a
beautiful Aston when we see him. We're going to have to live with that for the time being, I'm afraid.
Unfortunately, but we do have some intriguing battles all across the grid here in qualifying. Most interestingly is the battle for second place in BLC3. Look at how closely they are brought together. It's all just at the death there. We thought we might have seen a minor improvement in BLC2, but it wasn't to be. ART Sim Racing with a late effort to go 500ths, basically 600ths of a second shy of the BLC2 pole position. Fabrice Cornelis with one final effort here. What can he do as he comes up to the line? 7.5 tenths of a second shy before, now 3 tenths shy of pole position. Pole is currently in the hands of Arnage Competition, but there's still cars out on track looking to improve. Most importantly, Yuri Crispin in BLC3 just through the final few corners now. Hassler, do you think he's got enough in the tank?
Oh, he goes.
He's going for it.
All the way to the limit there. I think
that's definitely within the lines. You can stay within it. It's going to be close.
Yeah, and I think so too. Surely, definitely looking for every possible tenth to gain. Almost goes to it. Oh, he lost quite a bit of time there in the gravel. Might have gone too far. Might have picked up an off track. Certainly, that can't have been a huge.
So, unfortunately, I think you were right, Hassler. Just missing out slightly.
And then Robin, who's still out, he's coming through here. I think none of the other BLC4 machines are.
Frenchman, of course.
Oh yeah,
on
Sandy
soil.
Mitchell has a Starstruck I rating, but he's also the 2020 British GT champ with Rob Collard. Well, thank you very much, Thomas, for bringing up the encyclopedia that is chat on so many occasions. I'm not always the most knowledgeable on the national GT series, the regional stuff, and that I can't follow everything. And as a lot of the viewers here will know, Edward, my heart beats for cycling as well, and especially here in the season.
Of course.
But I was just gonna come down to the fact that it's great to have so many knowledgeable people there alongside us for race after race, just able to throw in that knowledge when it's needed. And I'll speak for myself and say on my part, it definitely is quite a lot here. Thomas Robin did indeed get the pole position in BLC4. In BLC3, it's Leandro Verle and that Arnage Competition, number 100 BMW, the BMW of the grid, the sole one in the lead as well. BLC2 headed by GTE Racing by Redant, and Joel Erlenbrook behind the wheel of that machine. And in the end, it was the number one car of Jimmy and Toons in a large competition that took pole position in BLC1. With that, of course, we'll go through the overall grid when we
Seeing
get
as well, Hasse, that Joel Eulenbroek is actually Renzo Eulenbroek. So that's
it is Renzo
who got it on pole position for GT Racing. We were saying just before the broadcast, which one is it? If it's not one, then it's the other. Today it is Renzo who is in the car putting it on pole position. But just on what we were talking about earlier about Sandy Mitchell, I mean, there's going to be a good mate of mine in commentary, Andy McEwen, who commentates the British GT Championship, who I've had the pleasure of commentating alongside for a few times now. He's going to be very happy to see Sandy Mitchell do well. He's a driver that's been rated very highly in the British motorsport scene, and it's cracking to see those talents transfer brilliantly over into the sim, which is interesting, Hasse, because usually you find sometimes that drivers that race in real world are actually struggling in the sim because you lose a lot of that feedback. You lose sort of the G forces and all of the other sensations of the car rumbling through your backside that you don't quite get in the sim. And that's where some of these professional drivers that race in the real world do struggle, which is an interesting crossover. Whereas drivers that go from the sim into real world get extra things added onto it. They get more sensation, more feeling, and they can have a little bit more confidence to push the car, which is interesting, but really great to see Sandy Mitchell adapting so well and, properly wringing the neck out of his Lamborghini to put it on the front row and essentially challenge Jimmy and Tunes into the first corner.
Yeah. And one thing is qualifying pace, but once you get the car fueled up and everything, it tends to be something quite different. In the end, here we are with the grid order for round 3 of the virtual Belcar series here. From Le Mans, as I said before, it's Jimmy and Toons on pole position in BLC1, and overall, of course, ahead of the aforementioned Sandy Mitchell. Jonathan Poulet and Olivier Bultink makes up row 2, with row 3 being Jeroen Vatlet and Ward Malach. Then Stefan Verhofste and Kenny Hermans on row 4, Maddie Sufi and Nick Stope on row 5, and Jeremy de Boever joined by Anthony Beck there on row 6. In 13th is the 42 car of Bram Bellemans, followed by Stephen Lemonnier. Then is Renzo Eulenbroek leading out BLC2 ahead of Chris Lowers, Martin Deckens, and Lawrence Klotz, with Benjamin de Pape, Abel Court, Glenn Mertens, and Thijs van den Berge, who is making up the rest of that class. Leandro Verle, the Brazilian driver. I think it's the first Brazilian we've, of course, do please correct me if I'm wrong, Edward, but I think it's the first Brazilian we've had in the series so far. Anyways, he's on pole position in that BMW number 100 for an Irish competition ahead of Fabrice Cornelis in BLC3. The rest of that class consisting of Jerry Crispin for Traxxas and his teammate, or the sister car, you could say, Robbie Janssens. Then George Karakoulis and Mohamed Soham, Edward Knight and Philip Verbet, Lucas Romano and Hendrik de Grave. Jelle Verstraeten is at the end of BLC3. Then Thomas Robin taking pole position in BLC4 ahead of Nicolas Rubelar. Thomas Leysen in the Flemish Hyundai. And then at the end of affairs, it's Stefan Kermans for the B-Sim Racing, followed by Milan Phaetons, who didn't set a time. Might have been a qualifying ban, which it could have been. I'm not quite sure there, Edward. But anyways, a massive grip and perfectly timed because the cars are rolling here.
Absolutely, Hasse. Yeah, perfectly timed indeed to get the race underway. Just watching them now make their way up towards the Porsche curves, giving them not too much room to actually get heat into the tyres, and that's going to be a little bit of a concern for drivers across the classes, but particularly these GT3s. They do struggle on the cooler tyres, as do, of course, Porsche Cup cars. TCRs, they're just going to understeer off, so they're not going to get massive snaps and slides that you could see them in their races, and GT4s actually do quite nicely on the cooler tyres. They aren't too horrendous to drive, so it's going to be a concern more for the cars towards the head of the field rather than the rear. But these wonderful shots of the cars all tightly bunched together. The anticipation, the excitement is starting to build up, Hasser, as we're not too far away from race start now.
Yeah, we'll see if we can get the widest possible shot of the field as they all will indeed bunch up towards the Dunlop chicane. No splitting of the field here in the virtual Belcar series, as we see in a lot of official races where there tends to be a gentleman's agreement to let a bit of distance in between, and that's mostly for regards of safety, I think. But it doesn't look as neat. That's very much true indeed. And here we have it.
We
Look at
should
Sandy
as well
Mitchell.
soon has to get the Patrouille de France going overhead. I think you can just hear the jets going by now.
Yeah, here they come. It's so cool that they're actually here.
Wonderful, addition to the sim. But here we go. Just a few more corners to go. And it is, of course, Arnage Competition who will set the pace. They are single file out of the final chicane. And Jimmy and Tunes gets the third round of the virtual Belcar 2022 season underway. And it's a brilliant start as well, ahead of Sandy Mitchell, Jonathan Boulet slotting in fourth. And they all managed to sort themselves out roughly here, side by side in the background. That's Christoph Hermanns in Duct Tape Racing Red around the outside, that will then become the inside of Luc Lemoy. Further back, actually, we've seen that Fabrice Cornelis has got the jump on Leandro Merla there.
Brilliantly so, yeah. Absolutely so. Oh, an early jump for the Aston. And taking the BLC3 lead immediately, Fabrice Cornelis. So many times have the Simtech E-team shown their quality in this championship. For season after season in the top class. Now on to a new challenge in BLC3. It has been a great challenge for them indeed. But surely they've been as strong as ever as well. And look at the battle down here behind. Oh my word, 3 wide on the Mulsanne straight there, Edward. Oh, and from that angle it looked like heartbreak for a short moment there, but obviously the drivers having a bit of a better angle than I had there.
Philip Vermeer is under so much pressure there as Edward Knight all the way around the outside, just with the nose ahead. Yes, he gets the car just ahead into the braking zone. They go through right, there's a little bit of rubbing. That's brilliant racing. Oh my word, has George actually managed to get this to stick? He has, but Philip Vermeer just, I think, gets a slight tap up the rear, loses control. We're going to get a slight replay here, and it was, actually a tap on the front from the Ignium car that just slightly lost a bit of control, and is that rear suspension damage actually for that Aston? Not sure.
Sure, but that could actually be. Let's see if we can get a little bit wiser.
Look at what George did. George was absolutely on it. George Karakoulis, I believe, which I think is a Greek surname, coming up as, I think, international. Well, that was an excellent move, wasn't it? Just to dart to the inside, nice and cleanly done. Caused a little bit of a ruckus in behind him, but it didn't worry him anything. As, oh dear, there's the car going slow off of the corner at the bottom of the Mulsanne.
Yeah, that's Anthony Beck for Ignium, and I think that's a slowdown he will have picked up, and there's no mercy within the Porsche Cup field here. It's not like your regular slower car class as they come through. They're going to keep on piling on with the poor exit, very poor exit, let me say, that he's gotten all the way down there at the exit of the Mulsanne corner now into Indianapolis. And a lot of making up to do, and there is that devilish difference in performance under braking there. The Porsche Cup cars without ABS, of course, they won't have any hopes about breaking the GT3s whatsoever. And it's something that will be tricky for the drivers to handle as the race goes on. Here's Renzo Erlenbrook, still leading, but you can see they're still somewhat close to the tail of the GT3 pack, but I don't think it's going to be that way around as they exit the first sector of the track for the second time around. in just about a minute's time here. Anthony Beck, I'm afraid, something's happened. And we're just going to have another look here, Edward. Let's see what's gone wrong for the 35 car. Just loses the rear.
Ooh, just loses the rear end, and that's a heavy hit into the arm coat. Unforgiving metal barrier that's going to probably see Anthony Beck with severe damage and probably taking a trip to the pits before too long. Meanwhile, towards the front of the race, the front of the field in BLC 1, we can see Sandy Mitchell piling the pressure on Jimmy Antunes, and we said that in qualifying over one lap, based on what we were seeing in practice, it was going to be all on Irish competition. But in the racing, sort of when the cars have got full tanks of fuel on board, interestingly enough, they were very close. So we're going to see what Sandy Mitchell can do to try and close in behind. Good to see a strong contingent of cars all the way up in front. The top 5 all close to one another, all covered by about 3 seconds. Then we've got a second pack further behind of Babo Follon, Bjorn van den Akker and Kenny Herdermans. And then the rest of the field sort of somewhat spread out. A few Porsche Cup cars that upset the rhythm slightly, but then we can shift our attention further back through the field. And actually, the BMW, while it was good in qualifying over one lap, seems to be struggling in race pace. And then Nicolas Rubilar in BLC 4 in a lot of trouble, actually. Hasser was doing quite well, but I think has dropped back quite considerably there.
Yeah,
something's happening because he's going very slowly. I'm not sure if there's a slowdown that he's serving or something else, because he has dropped off of the pace quite a lot. He was, I think, second in behind Quentin Guinez, but now that second place spot is occupied by the Hyundai Elantra of Thomas Layson and Flemish Sim Sports Red.
Yeah, just trying to figure out what happened for Rubilar, but there's been a bit of traffic, a bit of a GT4 hustle around him. He's lost a few positions.
I think it was further towards the end of the lap, you know, so I think it might have been just coming through the final couple of chicanes. So
somewhere around here, maybe. Oh, that was maybe a tad late.
No, I think this is right. It's just in behind. You can see class leader.
He's right behind the class leader here, right?
And he's dropping back a lot of times, so it is a slowdown, Hasser, I think.
Yeah, must have been a slowdown. And maybe one that he wasn't quite quick enough to react to. He's lost a massive amount of time here, Nicolas Rubilar.
For those, of course,
down 6 seconds on Thomas Layson. Yeah. I wonder if he picked up another one in pure frustration down at Tete Rouge, which is very easily done. Look at this. The bump draft train is already happening here. And Cedric Wouters is going for the... Oh, and that's a very...
aggressive cover.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, a bit of a tap there, it seems. The 100, I think, touching the number 2 there, coming into Mulsanne corner.
Trust me, Hester, if you've driven these cars, you'll know that BMW does not like stopping. The brakes are not good. It's good at accelerating, good at everything else, but slowing down and turning for corners, no chance. It's not what that car is built for. It's just, you know, long, big engine at the front.
Someone has lost a load of time here as well. That's Abel Court, who I think looks to have been maybe a slowdown. I'm not quite sure, actually. We're going to see. Oh, there's been... No, there's been trouble here, I'm afraid, for Jasper Schroenackers as well, who went off here in the 42. I wonder how that has happened. It hasn't happened yet.
Here. He turns it, unsettles the car on that curving. I mean, you do want to open it up as much as possible because that is the slowest corner on the circuit.
But it's very easy to make that mistake as well. Jeroen Vatlet just too heavy on the brakes coming in. Yeah, carbon copy. But he stays... Yeah, he actually gets out of it a bit quicker. So no major incident.
Fighting up in 5th place in that train for the lead, wasn't he, Hasser?
What happened for Abel Court then? Because he was also there.
Not able to keep it on the track.
That's a very different incident, though. That's the soft barrier that's going to, strangely enough, soften the impact just ever so slightly, but it's still going to be a bit of aero damage. They might have been rid of the worst.
I think he's got lucky there. I think he's got very lucky. You can see from that closer angle shot coming through the slow right-hander of, I believe that's Arnage, if I remember rightly.
Look too quickly. Let's try and go on board here. So just have a look at the steering wheel. 6th gear now into Dunlop.
Everything looks fine for me, Hassel.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you can see, but it all looks good. Good on board, though. You can really hear the sound of that wonderful, wonderful engine that Porsche put in pretty much everything nowadays. It's a beautiful, beautiful sound, and great to see a good contingent of Porsche Cup cars in this race.
Jeroen Vettel had that's the very same spin. Actually, he was the first one to have that problem. We'll just go on board to see just what happened here. Oh, this is very early to have the replay come in. Oh, this is Jeremy the Boover. What? That might have explained why. My apologies. Here we are on button with the Jeroen Vettel on the curb as he turns in there, and there's no grip for the rear tire. Especially if he's braking at the same time, that's going to be a problem. Now, though, he's trying to get past there on Pavo Fallen. Looking at the top speed of these cars so far through the speed traps, actually, the Audis seem to be quite quickly. And what happened to Jimmy and Toons? He's all the way down in 4th place here, Edward.
Something major must have happened, definitely.
I think he got a slowdown here because I don't see anything on the event viewer except that he's lost positions.
Great overtake, though, to get past Olivier Wiltink just into Mulsanne corner.
Definitely.
Good little overtake, and now he's going to have to hope that Sandy Mitchell and Jonathan Poulet start to scrap just a touch for the lead of the race. They look pretty much nose to tail. In fact, actually, here we go. They are scrapping. So as we see a replay of just what happened to Jimmy and Tunes.
And this wasn't it. So it must have... Oh, yeah, this was it. Exactly. That was the slowdown. And that's where he lost a few positions.
For people wondering at home that aren't too familiar with the iRacing service, there are 2 ways that you can get penalised for track limit violations. Minor ones usually count as a 1x, which is basically a strike system. After you get a certain number of those strikes, you have to serve a drive-through penalty, and then any more, then you will, of course, be disqualified from the session. And then the other format is a system that we see a lot at Le Mans, where you do struggle to get those sort of strike systems, because instead they penalise you via the slowdown penalties. So if you do run wide of the track, you need to give up the time you gained, and usually a little bit more. We are seeing, though, a brilliant fight, aren't we, between these 2 Porsche Cup cars. Martin Deckens just along the inside. Can he fend off the fight from Chris Lewis? They're still going for it, and Chris is going all the way around the outside to then get the inside. Excellent battling, and I think they've finally managed to sort themselves out. But wow, what a battle, what a treat we were just given there between the pair of them. Flemish Sports Yellow by Baracco having to settle for 3rd place. Meanwhile, Belcar eSports rookies in a little bit of a tussle with Lorenzo Olamrote, GTE Racing, though Red Ant continuing to lead BLC 2, while Jonathan Poulet now into the lead of the race. And I was telling you that the racing was going to be close in terms of race pace in BLC 1, and we've certainly been treated to that. We've had 3 different race leaders, all in the space of 12.5 minutes.
Yeah, a lot of action here early days. And those tricky slowdowns, I've seen them so often at Tete Rouge. Well, they've been made a little bit more lenient, and I think a lot of drivers will have an easier time pushing through there. But that final chicane, the forward chicane, of course, very easy to pick it up, especially in these cars that tend to be so stable on the curbs. You can really throw it in. Now look it up ahead. Here's Jonathan Poulet, does everything in his power to try and break the toe here of Sandy Mitchell. And I don't think Sandy Mitchell's all too impressed with that, let's be honest. They both have Jimmy and Toons in behind as well. And knowing the pace of the Swiss driver, then we'll see just how it plays out up ahead. But of course they know that any battling is going to allow anyone sort of dropped a little bit behind to come back on, as it ever so often is here. Martin Deckens, as we come back to the fight that gave us so much just before. The 999 still on the tail of the 55.
Interesting enough, Hassa. We've just seen the 209 car, the Aston Martin, setting the fastest lap of the race and also making up a position. So there's a bit racing, having a nice little run here. Fastest lap of the race so far and getting ahead of Hendrik de Grave in that Flemish Sim Sports black car. And I have to say that Aston Martin, both of those two actually looking very nice indeed. Big fan of the paint jobs that Flemish Sim Sports put out for us to look at with our beady eyes. Meanwhile, at the front of the VLC3 class, we've got that close three-way fight for the lead. Yet again, Cedric Valters just holding on for the moment as we see Fabrice Cornelissen, Leandro Erla there just holding in behind. Milan Phaetons for QSR Racing Esports is the biggest mover in the field, making up 11 places since
coming
the start.
from way back there. Yeah, exactly.
Didn't work out for him, but
and that's why I thought there was only one BMW. I just missed to see Milan Phaetons there, but he's been moving up a very steady start. And given that he came from so far back, he's actually not a long way off of the front of the race whatsoever. He's on the tail of George Karakoulis. I think that Porsche is going to suffer a little bit on the straights against the BMW. Might be very good through the twisty bits, but traditionally that makes it a little hard for you to especially both defend and attack as well here at Le Mans. You really want to have that top speed to be competitive. And Karakoulis, well, we'll see how that goes in his fight with Milan Phaetons. Now a lot of stuff happening here and behind the Flemish Aston, that beautiful machine. And then Mohamed Garbi.
Mohamed's looking around, isn't he? Trying to find his way through. That 209 Decimate Racing Team car had such a good little bit of battling earlier with Hendrik de Grave. Hendrik now getting the better of those two cars he was racing with. They go side by side into the braking zone. The Porsche is very good on the brakes and gets it turned in nicely for Mulsanne corner with a good exit. Might be pressuring Hendrik de Grave in towards Indianapolis. Fastest lap of the race for Sandy Mitchell there in second place in BLC 1. As we see Christoph Hedemans with a little bit of a moment with, I think that's Thijs Vandenberg, just copying him in the background there. Meanwhile, look at this little close battle as they make their way towards Indianapolis. The Porsche covering the inside, just trying to hold on side by side all the way around the outside, which then becomes the inside for the 209 Aston that easily gets that move made. A couple of, gravel bits kicked up into the air. As look at that, right back down the inside. The Porsche goes for it yet again. Lucas Romano with an excellent move. And all of this fighting is allowing Robbie Janssens, the Traxxas by JWS Motorsport car, back into the picture. That was the move made by the 81 Porsche. Lucas Romano, RP Motorsports GT4 now up into 8th place in class. Not 8th place, 7th place in class, rather. Further in front, though, Hassa, I want to keep my eyes on Jonathan Poulet and Sandy Mitchell with Julian Tunes in the background, because I think Sandy Mitchell has actually just gotten back into the lead now. I think we've just seen a change of position.
Yeah, he has indeed. He passed here.
Slow down.
Slow down indeed for Jonathan Poulet. Pushed too hard there on the exit of Dunlop. And that's enabled Jimmy and Toons, who put in a new fastest lap of the race here as they crossed the line with a 3:57.41, just a tenth quicker than Sandy Mitchell. He's clawed back up and will now have the slipstream with 8 tenths to pull into Jonathan Poulet there. He'll be able to claw that in with no real hassle, I think. That'll put him somewhat within striking distance of Sandy Mitchell, though still somewhat out the slipstream as well. And it is difficult to break the toe once it's there. And a good example of that, Martin Deckens, very much still fighting with Chris Lowers here, who's, they had a good long battle before, and I sort of want to see if I can recall it there for a bit of a review there, but I think it was pretty brilliant. Let's see, I think we've been going on from about here. So into Indianapolis. And through the slow bit, there's Lowers gets ahead though. Decken stays on the outside. Which then becomes the inside here. Very hard to hang on the outside. But somehow they go through side by side on one of the most difficult corners without really losing any of them. There's a bit of a slipstream from the Lamborghini ahead there as well. Might be playing into the advantage of the Dutchman against the 999. Haven't put that 999 back on the underside of the rear wing either there. Then through the Porsche curves as well. And as that becomes the outside, finally, I think Martin Deckens realizes that it's a lost cause. He slots back in. That's only just like a quarter of a lap as well, side by side. Pretty neat racing, to be honest. Very, very high standards from both of these drivers.
We've got to keep our eyes on that fight, of course, because with the pace that Chris Lewis is showing for ART Sim Racing, closing in on the leader, might be interesting to see that fight start to erupt in BLC2. BLC1, though, the fastest lap of the race, currently set by Sandy Mitchell. Very quick after passing through, as we see race controller penalty for car 340, stop and go for 30 seconds for causing a collision. That is the Porsche of George Karakoulis. So that is a big
causing a collision there.
For,
yeah, that's a major
BLC3
one
in that class fight, because George Karakoulis was really quick. Interestingly, that's probably for the moment in towards the first of the two Mulsanne chicanes at the start of the race.
Yeah, pretty much there on that one. I would believe so. But it's a shame.
Yeah, for me, I don't think there was anything untoward by that move. It looked pretty clean around the inside. Didn't look like he had contact. I think a lot of the drama happened further back, didn't it, with the Ignia Motorsport car of Edward Knight getting all out of shape, and I think going into the side of Philip Verbey and the ART Sim Racing Porsche. So
this one,
interesting.
Right? No, this wasn't the one. I think this might have been the one actually. Yeah, this will be the one, I'm afraid. And I think there is not all that much to discuss. One we hadn't seen.
So that was a separate incident, it turns out, and that one you can understand why the stewards tore out the rule book and slapped him across the face with it there. I don't think you can have too many complaints about that. We certainly have no complaints about this. Excellent racing at the sharp end of the BLC3 class. First, second, and third, all separated by barely a second. While Jonathan Poulet begins to reel in Sandy Mitchell. The first few sectors of this lap looking very nice for Jonathan. Just trying to bring Sandy Mitchell back into the clutches of second place. While Jimmy and Tunes doesn't really want to fight too much at this stage. I think he's quite happy to save a little bit of fuel and manage the race, because, of course, with these 3-hour races, the fuel management and the race management in general does start to come into things. Intriguingly as well, as usually we see drivers opt to double stint tyres, and with sort of the way the racing goes here at Le Mans, I'm interested if we're going to see drivers maybe try and take one set till the end, because you don't really run the tyres as much as you run the fuel here.
Yeah, that's true. If you can double stint your tires before the opposition, that's always going to be a huge advantage. About 20 seconds gain, I think, from all classes around here. I think it's very similar times for the tire swaps. Let's just see if we can get a glimpse of the track conditions, because I actually never really got around to seeing that. I'm just trying to find it in the overlay controls here.
And while we're doing that, we're going to be staying on board with Leandro, and you're going to listen here. He's in the slipstream of the cars. Thank you very much, Hasse. Just listen for a second as you come into the braking zone.
Massive lifting and coasting there in the BMW.
Lots of lifting and coasting there, but Hasse, take us away with the track conditions. It's kind of a bit spicy out there.
It's actually a lot hotter than you would necessarily expected with the cloudy conditions there, but a track temp of 42 degrees, and that's going to be ripping through the tires indeed.
Interestingly, though, it is overcast. Of course,
yeah, we would probably expect to see the track cool down relatively quickly, but
4 p.m. in sim time as well, I believe.
Air temp of, what was that, 32 degrees, so with that, it's going to be... There's going to be a potential, at least, for the air temp to...
Sorry, Hasse, just seen a close fight erupting there. Jonathan Roberts there, Valkyrie eSports rookies, just getting ahead of Jeremy DeBova in BLC 1.
Oh, yeah. So we hop on board directly with DeBova in the Audi. Sometimes difficult to really spot the difference audio-wise as you jump on board. So basically the same power plant there. That rear end of the Audi looks a little bit unsettled to me through that first sector. Might be really quick once we get a little bit more downforce on it. Often it's quite a lot of a compromise as well here in...
the low downforce Audi wants to kill you every turn, every single opportunity it gets. When you got low downforce on that car, it is... I just can't get on with it, but then again, I prefer the safety net of the BMW GT3. That's sort of my my realm of expertise, is that bit of machinery. As we see, Jasper Schumacher is just trying to get through some of the Michael PLC 2 traffic. This is Leandro Erla, just, I think, content to stay in behind the two battling Astons. Doesn't want to upset the apple cart too much, instead focusing on the fuel saving. Yeah, we know how good that BMW is in a straight line, and he could probably easily pass, if not one, potentially both of those Astons if he put his mind to it, but instead is very happy just to slot in behind. But sorry, Hasse, I think you had a question?
I was just wondering just how the BMW is on fuel economy overall. I know it has that 7th gear, but I actually don't know if I didn't really pay attention before to that, and I didn't see if they actually went into that 7th gear. Staying in 3rd through Dunlop, that's very much a 7-speed thing to do. Normally you would take 2nd.
And in these cars, you do actually want to go in a slightly higher gear than you're expecting. It does allow the car to sort of stay a little bit settled and actually help carry the speed. The engine braking is pretty strong in these things. You can use the downshifts to sort of aid the braking for a corner quite considerably, actually, if you just slam it through the gears down at a pretty rapid rate of knots. But now, on board, we're going to see him shift up into 6th gear. 7th gear is available to him, but I don't know if we're going to see him utilise it. 7th gear usually what would be used in this car in real life is a fuel saving gear for real life, but of course in the iRacing sim, this is how much they're lifting and coasting. That is absolutely insane. Good, almost, that felt like 500 meters before the braking zone that he was lifting there. That's a huge amount of time to be off of the throttle, but the reason why they're lifting and coasting is because iRacing calculates the fuel usage based on your throttle position, not the revs as you might expect to see in various other sims, and as well translating through to real life. So that's the reason why we don't see them using that 7th gear to lower the revs and save the fuel. Yeah,
that's a good point, and we've seen it with the Audi diesel LMP1 hybrid as well. That's of course a little bit of a different example because it is a diesel, but we've seen a lot of setups actually run where it doesn't use the 6th gear at all and just set up to use 5 of them. Sandy Mitchell here with a new fastest lap. pulling out the and Jimmy and Toons has dropped back quite dramatically here. Not on the last lap, but on the opening sector of this one. I think he might have got another slowdown for himself. I'm afraid that's actually the situation we're looking at.
We've got the windscreen wipers going. You could just see for a moment that Jimmy Tunes had the windscreen wipers going. I think he might have been trying to flash the headlights, but instead was just wagging the windscreen wiper.
That's brilliant.
Oh, that's a good little thing that they've added into iRacing, of course, the addition of windscreen wipers, maybe in preparation for inclement weather to be added to the service.
Will be coming
at some point.
Quite soon, actually, I think.
It's more of a question of when, isn't it, not if, which is what we love to see on
But definitely,
iRacing.
It's definitely coming, but it's going to be, at least to my understanding, the most advanced rain simulation that we've seen to date in terms of how the water enacts with the tarmac and everything. And very sophisticated as well, which is why it's taking so long to implement. Also, I think they wanted to work before they implemented. And I actually appreciate that. We wouldn't want to have some non-functioning thing added to the sim prematurely.
What I want to see is how well they manage the spray effects off the rear end of the car, and if we see any of that, what I believe they call the dovetailing effect, isn't it? When you see those huge plumes of water droplets just off of the back of the cars when they're going at speed, just to see the aerodynamic effects being generated by the cars. You see a lot in Formula One, those huge sort of almost walls of water just shooting upwards from the rear end of those cars, just based on the sheer amount of downforce they generate that kicks up those huge vortices and sends the water skywards. I really do hope that iRacing can translate that effect into the sim, because you do see a few sims struggling a little bit with those few effects. But of course, iRacing, they do like to do things as accurately as possible. All of the cars scanned down to the nearest 0.01 millimeters, as are the tracks, all laser scanned. So the Le Mans that we're seeing on the circuit has all of the same bumps and corner angles and everything else that you see in the real world, which is why it is so attractive, of course, to real world drivers up and down the globe. Seeing one of them at the moment, Sandy Mitchell, as we mentioned, British GT champion, currently leading this race. Got held up just a touch earlier on in the lap by I believe that was Kenneth Vranken earlier on, as Lucas Romano coming into the pits, and that's a very early trip to the pits.
Yeah, and you gotta wonder just why he jumped to the pits as well. The engine is running, and I
think this is a strategy call, Hassa, because
with
the way that fuel usage works here in iRacing, and the fact that you are flat out for so much of the lap here at Le Mans, you're not going to really be able to make it to the hour. You're going to have to do a huge amount of fuel saving to make it to the 1 hour mark. So instead, I think we've seen Lucas Romano go for the fuel saving tactic. As I say that, though, I think it's showing that he's actually out. So maybe he's actually just called it a night, and I'm completely off the mark. No, he's back out, actually. I think he's just handed over to his teammate Joshua Campfield, I think that is now.
Oh, no, what happened to Sandy Mitchell?
Oh dear, what? Something definitely has happened to Sandy Mitchell, and that looks like, to me, could have been a slowdown coming through the Dunlop chicane here.
It's quite possible. We'll see just where the passes was made. Here came... that's...
No.
Yeah, that's going to be one at Ford. And then... a few seconds later, there's the second pass. So on the same slowdown, exiting the Ford chicane. And that's a bit of a slide for Jimmy and Toons, going very far wide. Still rotation of the lead in BLC1. No one's really been able to run away.
No one wants it, it seems. No one wants to hang on to it. They get into the lead, make a mistake, and drop all the way back down. So that's a big surprise. But Jimmy and Tunes with the fastest lap of the race. The Swiss driver is on a mission at this moment in time and is being aided by, obviously inadvertently, the positioning of Corentin Guinez. Have a little look at him, of course. The Frenchman on home soil and doing very well for it. Currently in the lead by some margin, 12, nearly 13 seconds ahead of second place in BLC4 Arnage competition. That 18 car currently piloted by Nicolas Rubelard, the Argentine, who has been very quick in previous rounds. Didn't quite have the fortune, if memory serves right, at Watkins Glen, and also actually, I believe, at Spa. So fingers crossed for Arnage competition that a little bit more luck their way in tonight's racing and see what they can do through the strategy to try and come back at Corentin Guinez there in the lead. Meanwhile, Cedric Wouters continues in the lead of BLC 3, harassed and harried by Fabrice Cornelis consistently all race long, with Leandro Vella just hanging there in the balance in behind. I don't know if we're going to see too much racing between these drivers yet, but I think give it about 20, 15 minutes just before the pit stops. They're going to want track position. They're going to start to scrap.
Yeah, and the same goes up here, I think. And if not, I think as well for the race lead now, Poulet by about half a second to Jimmy and Tunes, who's right about back in it, and Sandy Mitchell not far off at all. Olivier Bolting about 7.5 seconds back. Don't discount that Sim District vibe GT3 green machine, the 45. Could be in for it as well. Oh, it's 7.5 seconds to Sandy Mitchell. Jimmy and Tunes on the fastest lap of the race. Yet again here, 3:56 dead. That is a flyer of a lap.
Storming lap there from Jimmy and Tunes in Arnage competition. Really starting to reel in Jonathan Poulet. But interestingly, Hasser, what did we see last time out? We saw that Arnage competition had the pace at Watkins Glen, but we saw a good charge from Valkyrie competition right at the end, and a good strategy call was what saw them exit the pits ahead in the lead of the race. And then Arnage competition started to slip up a bit, didn't they? So maybe we'll see a repeat, because Arnage competition do have a lot of pace in their locker for the moment. And what can Jimmy and Tunes do to get that car before he hands over to his teammate in the best possible position to take something from tonight? Fabrice Cornelis again, just dropping back, was very close to the rear end of Cedric Wouters, but then with the fuel saving, dropping back into the clutches of Leandro Vella before you see the ability through the corners of that Aston Martin just to eke out a little bit more of a gap. So you're seeing the different strengths and weaknesses of these cars. The Aston is what I believe to be sort of a jack of all trades, master of none car. It's very sort of middle of the road across pretty much everything. Top speed is pretty much bang average. Decent on the brakes, but not as good as the Porsche. Decent on rotation, but not as good as the Porsche. All right on corner exit, but definitely not as good as the BMW and as the McLaren. But it is just pretty much slap bang in the middle. Quite happy everything. I think the one thing that that car does excel in are the medium to high speed corners. So this section here coming into Indianapolis is where the Aston does seem to be a little bit more favoured, just sending it through, such as is the McLaren as well. McLaren would be very nice through here as well, just carrying the momentum through. And then, of course, the Porsche curves are where the Aston is going to excel, as will, of course, these Porsche BLC3 cars that we're just seeing at the front of the shot before they peel off to the left and show us Jonathan Poulet under a lot of pressure from Jimmy and Tunes.
Yeah, indeed, and Tunes is looking to try and get past here. Maybe Lou using the slipstream of the slower machines and going a long way around the outside into Indianapolis to take the lead. That was a very, very good move. Doubling up. A double Häkkinen on Santa and Schumacher, you could say, but just add in another back marker and make him go a bit slower. That was perfectly timed. Jonathan Poulet, we're going to have another look at that. Edward, maybe the overtake of the season so far. On board we are here. See side by side, just closing so quickly onto the grass with the left-hand wheels there. Very confident. And then ahead in the braking zone before they enter, and thus taking the lead. But at a critical time here as well, Edward, where it really could make a difference. And as we've seen, just got, Sandy Mitchell, ever so slightly dislodged from that lead battle.
That was a textbook example, though, of overtaking while dealing with traffic by Jimmy Antunes, almost using the traffic to his advantage. Was able to sweep all the way around the outside, use that extra little bit of slipstream he got from that Porsche GT4 car to make that move stick into Indianapolis. Sandy Mitchell now can see that those two will try and work together to try and break away from himself. Fastest lap well into the 55s now by Jimmy Antunes, a 55.420. Excellent lap time. Jonathan Poulet, they're not giving this up without a fight. Very close as they made their way in towards the Dunlop chicane.
Yeah.
And now as we make our way through this first sector, Tetrushin and Mulsanne fast approaching. Maybe Jonathan Poulet will try and fight back coming through these next few corners, and of course the on-point braking zones for the chicanes.
He's definitely close enough, Edward. I mean, he's
really close, yeah.
Yeah, and
Very
with the run here, that traffic though might be the saving grace of Jimmy Antunes. Look at Antunes actually pulling away here. Early days at least on the straight. I don't know if it's the traffic up ahead, but or it might just be lifting as well from Poulet.
I think it's setup. I think it's more setup than anything else. I think Arnage Competition have got that car really nailed on for straight line speed, but of course they're getting a little bit more slipstream from those cars up ahead. And this is actually a battle that I wanted to come to, Hasse, in the BLC3, that these cars have arrived on the scene for. There's so many cars all close together. You can see Milan Phaeton's just up ahead, right in the wheel tracks of Mohamed Yassin Zogam Gabi. That's a bit racing. Look at them, so close together, nose to tail. The BLC1 cars navigate that safely, but then if we can have a look at that fight, it's looking pretty tasty in BLC3. And this is
spicy one, wasn't it?
Pretty spicy, yeah, for P4 in class.
Up ahead, it's that three-way battle as well. That's not going anywhere as well. Still led by Cedric Wouters and the 25 Traxxas by JWS Motorsports Aston. Ahead of the Simtech E-Team car with Fabrice Cornelis. And then Leandro Verles, who's just sitting there, the Brazilian. He's very much just sitting there. Very capable, it seems. I think they have an ace up their sleeve. Then that battle for fourth place with four cars within a second here. And interestingly, so again, 3 Astons and a BMW, and then the Porsches further back here. They don't seem to be as competitive here at Le Mans, the GT4 Porsche Cayman. Oh, there's been a lead change there. Here goes Cornelis into Indianapolis. Side by side, though. Wouters is going to hold on as it becomes the inside. The outside becomes the inside, and then Wouters shielding off Fabrice Cornelis here. No late dive into Arnage. Funny enough, Arnage Competition is in behind. I was just wondering why I felt like I just said that word. Well, that was a very good reason indeed. Anyway, down towards the Porsche curves we go. And another go for Fabrice Cornelis, who's going to see if he can hang on to it around the outside here as it becomes the inside for the next one. We've seen it work before, but this time there's no budging from Cedric Wouters. Just a slight bit of contact, just a nudge I think there was here. And Cedric Wouters holds on. This is brilliant racing indeed. Some of the best I've seen in a very, very long time. Wow.
They two had a lot of confidence in each other there to go side by side all the way through the Porsche curbs. That was immense. At points there was, you could fit barely a little finger between them. It was that close. I don't know, though, if Leandro had that same faith in the pair of them. He gave them a wide berth. He could have closed up massively as they were going side by side, but kept a lot of space back just in case there was contact. Very smart driving from the Arnage competition BMW driver, as we have a replay of. Oh, that was amazing.
This is the first one between the two here, as Cornelis makes the attempt into Indianapolis. And then I think the second one into the Porsche curves here is the one to really watch. Did they even touch?
They don't
no,
touch,
they didn't.
no.
They don't even touch. And I've mentioned the standards of driving before in this championship, and it's brilliant to see some of the very best racing around here in the virtual Belcar series, and it's very much on display for us here tonight, Edward. I said I had a feeling about a good race coming in on us.
What I'm amazed, though, is
wow, it's been really
just
good so
how
far.
good they were racing side by side, and the professionalism, just the ability shown. You could be forgiven for thinking that this was, you know, the real deal, that this was actually them racing physically at Le Mans as professional race drivers. It was that close together. Really excellent driving standards on display here. Cedric Wouters just hanging on by the tips of his fingers to the class lead in BLC 3, as we see two fastest laps set at once in BLC 2 as Olenrock is on an absolute mad one, the other one in BLC 4 by Corentin Guinness. As we have a replay here, so of Barton Beckens
taking second place, yeah,
getting ahead of Chris Lowers or Luvers?
I think it's Lowers.
Hopefully that's correct. If not, Chris, I'm sure you'll be able to correct us when you hop out of the car and listen to us butchering your name.
O-O-U is always ow in Dutch.
Ow.
So, yeah. Our, whatever it is, it's always pretty much ow. There might be there might be instances where, but I'm not a native Dutch speaker. I am getting better, actually, at the wonderful Dutch and Flemish also language. I'm actually, I think, more of a Flemish speaker myself than a Dutch speaker. It just seems to be so much more close to my maternal tongue that is Danish. It makes it a bit easier. We've had a swap for the lead here with Jimmy Antunes ahead of Jonathan Poulet. We saw that before. Poulet's been caught in quite quickly here by Sandy Mitchell, and now the bump drafting to catch up to Antunes is real indeed, because these two find themselves about 2.5 seconds down on the race leader, and they don't want to be there. They want to be in the slipstream of that number one Anage competition machine, as Anage yet again goes through Anage. It's going to be one to mention a few times here tonight. But definitely, we've seen it before, and if done well, there isn't really a lot of risk to the bump drafting. It's, of course, different from car to car. Some cars do have the ability to wedge in underneath the car in front, and if that's the case, it's not all that safe. But in most machines here at Le Mans, as long as the driver in front doesn't do anything strange and keeps on going in a straight line, it's going to be quite safe and a good source of gaining time, especially if you got a single car out ahead being chased by a group of cars in behind. Wel, ik denk dat moest de tijd blijven, Thomas, voor een beetje wel Vlaams. And then you can make of it what you will. Ask questions and I'll try to answer at the very best I can. Make it simple, please.
There's backmarker traffic coming through here.
Oh,
so
wow,
this is heart and mouth stuff. Just watching at the moment. Joran Vatlet, Simworld.be fast. I was just having a little bit of a moment there because I thought just for a second there might have been a little bit of contact, but they all got through unscathed, at least physically. Maybe a few mental scars, but you know, they'll be fine. They're
that was
strong
nothing,
drivers. They'll
that
be
was
fine.
Nothing. You'll be
fine. Look at the windscreen wipers going now.
Yeah.
They're trying to flash the headlights, but I don't think they've got the right things bound, and instead the windscreen wipers are
just
going.
It does look pretty cute, doesn't it, as they come through flashing. I guess that could have been interpreted in a pretty wrong way. My apologies, but
There we go. You can just see the Audi. Kenny Hardeman's fastest Audi in the race. Currently in 6th in class, which just shows how strong that the Lamborghinis are, that they occupy all spots of the top 5. Very, very nice car to drive indeed, though a lot more drivable than the Audi, which I think is why it's favoured for these slightly longer races. You can see as well, we're approaching the 50-minute mark, Hazza, so we should be seeing the first round of pit stops in around about 5 to 10 minutes or so, depending on fuel usage and how well the drivers have been able to save a little bit. Joel Olenbroek again. Actually, no, you're not Joel. Why am I saying that? It's Renzo Olenbroek, of course, with the fastest lap of the race so far.
They've been going so well in BLC2. We haven't really paid them too much mind. Apologies for that, of course, to GT Racing by Red Ant and the 12th car. They've been brilliant so far. Renzo Olenbroek with the qualifying pole time in class.
Curtin Greeners with the purple lap as well.
Yeah, and they've done a brilliant job as well so far, leading by 16 seconds, the AC Motorsports eSports AM machine. I don't know how local they are in terms of course, being French isn't, I think, exactly the same as being local to Le Mans. France
It's their home race.
But it's a home race indeed, and they're doing very, very well on home soil. Really the class of the BLC4 field so far. You can really say that Flemish have had their hands full as well this season. There's not a lot of cars there, but they're, the level though in BLC4 is certainly there this season. Now Fabrice Cornelis did take the lead, and I wonder just what happened. I'm gonna see if we can figure out, because I'm not sure if it was a hugely dramatic move. It was into Indianapolis a little bit earlier this time around. A better run for Cornelis. And Wouters had no thoughts about trying to stay too wide for that one. Cornelis well ahead into the lead before the pit stops. And
this is what we were saying earlier, Hassel, wasn't it? That the battle for track position would start to come just a little while before the pit stop. So that's, I think, exactly what we're seeing now with Fabrice Cornelis trying to get that position done. And you might deceive me, but is Leandro looking a little bit racier in our large competition behind, or is that just maybe a little bit of a deception there? We might see that BMW creep a little bit closer to the rear end. Actually, we're going to see the two Astons creep a little bit closer to each other, and yet again,
it's going to be returning of the favor.
Side by side, but this time there is a Lamborghini looking to get into the picture. Can't find a way through, especially when they are continuing to race side by side. Fabrice Cornelis with the outside that then becomes the inside. They almost touch. They come ever so close, tantalizingly close to touching, but they hold on for now. Fabrice Cornelis keeping his grip on the lead of the race, and mercifully for the BLC1 cars, they are able to creep their way through, just giving each other enough room to make it nice and safely. They were very clear about their intentions there, which is what you need to do. As into the pits early, your own Vatlet, Kenny Hellemans, Bauer, Fallon, all coming in. As, of course, just after doing all of that, Johan van den Akker and Ingmar Andersen decides, you know what, we're going into the pits as well. So we just overtook you. We absolutely scared the living daylights out of you poor BLC3 cars, and peacing out. Into the pits they go.
I must admit that I'm very surprised to see a guy with such a Swedish name under a Belgian flag. I'll have to make some inquiries about that, because Ingemar Andersson, that was actually more Norwegian almost, but
I was gonna say that's it.
Ingemar Andersson, I can be more Norwegian if you want to do it. We're not going too much linguistic.
I'm going Swedish chef on us now as well.
I must admit by now, and if you get me started on this, Edward, I would be very hard to stop, I'm afraid. But I have quite a repertoire of accents to switch into. I try not to, because I try to stay somewhat professional when we broadcast. But but it's a lot of fun going through as well. By the way, Thomas, thank you so much. I think that was even a bit of a situation where I hardly even know what I wanted to say, just to say something. But the plan is at some point to be able to conduct some of the interviews in Flemish. That would be quite the thing here, given that it's the virtual Belcar series indeed, and that it would be a lot of fun to have a non-Flandrian conduct these interviews in such a manner, I would think. Even though the poor Edward May would be pretty detached, I'm afraid, in such a situation, which is a pretty good idea to maybe not do it too much. Anyway, Sandy Mitchell, that's just to keep on track with the racing. He's just on the tail of Jonathan Poulet, and he's not gonna move away from there. I wonder, probably gonna be on... Oh, that's on the limit, this stuff, Edward. I take it these guys are going to be pitting at the end of this lap, given that it looks to me they're going absolutely flat out at the moment, having done all the saving they need.
Jonathan Poulet and Sandy Mitchell, I'm not sure about Jimmy and Tune. Spent a lot of time in behind those other cars for a while. Might have been able to save enough fuel. We're not entirely sure, though, because, of course, Jimmy did need to make up a few positions. I think we might see potentially one of those cars coming to the pits, but there would be a big turn up, I think, if that was the case. Don't count them out just yet, as we see Philip Vliegen battling away. He is, of course, for 4th place in BLC2, and now this is Union Tunes just coming towards. You can see windscreen wipers flashing away. I think he knows that we're looking at him. Is that maybe a sign that he's coming into the pits? Yes, he comes in, as does Jonathan Poulet, as does Sandy Mitchell.
Yeah, and that was to be expected at this point. A nice lead there for Antunes, counting about 1.8 seconds to Poulet, who's flying into the pit lane there. Close to half a second through the Porsche curves. I think that says something about what you mentioned before. Seems to me that Valkyrie competition might have gone for a little bit more wing than Anache, and just being able to squeeze that little bit more cornering speed out of the car at the cost of a little bit of top speed on the Mulsanne straight. However, and any other straight on the track as well. It's the only one. But what I'm thinking as well is that it might aid them in terms of tire wear here, and just how hard they go on the tires, and
driver
just how
changes.
Early driver changes. And
However, Antunes is staying in. Is he going to keep the tires on? Usually you see if drivers stay in the car, they can get away with not taking tires. Okay, so they do not take tires. What about Nilsson Carvalho and Oscar Pai? Oscar Pai doesn't seem to be taking tires. Nilsson Carvalho still stationary in the pits. So Sim District 5 eSports GT3 Red opting to take tyres now. And they were stationary for quite a while there before going up on the jack, so that could tell us something about maybe a penalty or something that they were having to serve. Maybe a bit of speeding in pit entry, perhaps. Not 100% sure. You can see the two Vive eSports GT3 cars up on the jacks. Scott McFall in behind Nilsson Carvalho as the engine goes. Was that an engine blow up? Oh dear, that car should be moving now. It's come back down on the jacks, and that car needs to be moving. It should be moving. Heartbreak for Simdershik Vibe Esports GT3 Red as they are out of this race, Asa.
So it looks, I'm afraid. What has happened? Scott McFall is back running. Nilsson Carvalho, what has happened to them? Because they rolled into the pit lane with no sort of problem whatsoever. And I was just coming in, I was sort of cracking up over Thomas's comment in chat. And, well, they will have to switch drivers, but at some point, I don't know if they have to switch drivers on every stint. I actually have to admit. But Nilsson Carvalho still stationary in the pits, and we have no clue what has happened.
I think they're having to try and repair it now. I'm not sure. Yeah.
So
what
it seems
on earth went wrong. So, hopefully we can hear
let's see here. Entering, let's try just to, as they enter the pit lane and we go on board. This might take a while, but we're just gonna see if we can get to the bottom of it. But I'm very surprised. Do you reckon the car would have been that hot that coming into the pit would have, you know, because the cars do tend to heat up when they're stationary. They're not really made for being stationary. But on the other hand, they are made for being able to take a pit stop without that causing the trouble. It could have been something from somewhere else. I'm not quite sure. Are they moving yet? Negative. They're still standing in the pits. And the race is definitely over for them now. Sandy Mitchell, and I think that tells me it might have been a problem with maybe the gear on the drivers.
Could have been something.
I don't know, Edward. I'm at a loss here.
Strange one, but very shortly we will see Jimmy and Tunes puts a lap on Sandy Mitchell. Just coming out of Arnage now is the race leader in, of course, Arnage competition. Valkyrie competition were a lot slower in the pits by the tune of almost 4 seconds and lost even more time on pit exit and pit entry. So, intriguingly, Oscar Pye losing out to Jimmy and Tunes, but Jimmy seems to be content to stay in the car. Oscar Pye as well. They don't think they changed any tyres on that Valkyrie competition car, so they're going to carry on for now and then opt to probably make one final tyre change towards the end of the race, unless they have enough confidence to keep those tyres in the right operating window, I suppose, until the end of the race. As we see Jimmy and Tunes now just going through the final couple of corners now, just exiting, I think, the final corner now, and will indeed put a full lap on Nilsson Cavallo. I saw Sandy Mitchell hop in the car for a brief moment just to figure out the extent of the damages, but I think they're just having to stay stationary and repair it. And a blown engine is a lot of time.
That is a long time, but we still never got around to figuring out exactly what happened. And I really want to, because usually you can hear the engine as it goes. Here he enters the pits. And the engine runs at this point, so must have been okay. I'm still. This one is new to me because we haven't seen any signs of a blown engine. It's obviously doesn't seem to be running anymore. At least we've had the PLC 3 cars, at least some of them here. Traxxas by JWS. Very much in lead contention. They are not going to do the extra lap that SimTag E-Team and an Ash competition with the 100 BMW are going to do. 1.3 seconds for Leandro Verle, so he's going to get to stretch the legs of the BMW now. They did a big effort to get that extra lap in as well. Interestingly as well, that there is a rule that states that there has to be at least 2 driver swaps. Jimmy and Tunes might be in trouble with an Ash competition in the number 1 car unless they are expecting to take a very, very late splash and dash pit stop. But in that case, that would be a very bad time to have a driver swap, because you wouldn't be done with the driver swap before the fueling is over there. And you'd really, really have trouble on your hands and lose a lot of time on that account. That doesn't seem very smart to me as a plan, and I would expect it not to be the plan as such. The 2 leading Porsche Cup machines here of BLC2, Edward, have yet to make their opening pit stops. Same goes for the guy in 3rd, which is Loic Lamol for BSim Racing, the number 5 machine. And then I wonder, yes, it's Griffin Hinwisit, I guess it is. Sounds sort of almost Welsh to me. almost. Although that's not the case. Seems like the team hasn't been set up correctly here in our system, which is why it's just showing as Benelux. Let's see if we can get that fixed for later on. But Martin Dickens, as I said, Chris Lauer still to have their pit stops. And Guus Franken. Oh, Guus Franken has had a major incident, and that would be enough to... Well, he's moving again. But that is a major knock. I think that's on the exit of the second Mulchen chicane down towards Unadier. Guus Franken, he's been stationary twice here. Edward, let's see what happened.
See. Just into the second Mulsanne chicane and just over rotates on the throttle, I think, as well. That rear wing damage is... in fact, that entire left-hand side damage is probably what unsettled the car, because when you go through a right-hander, full left-hand side of the car is fully loaded up.
I think here's what actually happened. He got Audi'd as the rear end just started going, and it never stopped until it was way too late here on board with him.
You have no time to react and save it at that point. No. The walls are so close, especially on that area of the circuit. You have to be careful as well, because you can't really rejoin too safely, especially when the track is sloping to the right-hand side and you crash on the left. It's always going to try and drag you into harm's way. So good awareness from everyone to make sure there wasn't a further incident there. But now, all of a sudden, a lot of pressure is being put on Scott McFall's shoulders, because he is the lone Simdristic 5 eSports car in BLC 1 after his teammates in Simdistrict eSports Red seem to suffer. Car. Yeah, they sister car seemed to struggle a little bit with some sort of mechanical issue.
It was an engine blow up.
But I'm not sure. We know it was an engine blow up, but we don't exactly know what caused it. Was the main cause of concern, it seems.
Very, very early in the race as well, around the 1 hour mark. That is Griffin is indeed from Belgium. That's what I expected as well, and so certainly not surprised to to hear that. Then it makes more sense to me as well. I was like, is that like a traditional Welsh surname? And that's actually, I'm saying that because sometimes I actually find some of the regional British names, Edwards, to be really confusing, and even the Brits cannot decide how to sometimes pronounce, well, your own names, and especially the Welsh.
I mean, it is very interesting, of course, it's basically a lot based on like ancient history of the UK itself, with all of the different things like the Celts and the Angles and the Saxons, and then the Vikings, and then the Romans, and there's all different sort of names that came through here and there, and you can actually sort of see a lot about the history of the UK just based on the place names themselves. So it's a lot, but we're not going to have a history lesson here on the broadcast tonight. Don't worry, I'm not going to delve into all of that. You're safe from that for now, as instead we have a race on our hands to talk about, thankfully, of course, as Finn Klopman comes out into the lead of the race. Head of now Thomas Stockmans, who is taking over in the Arnage Competition 100 BMW. Rick Crispin in the number 25 car in third place. For now, as Quentin Guinez coming through into the lead of the race still, but with a very, very quick time, a 4:29. Not 4:29, 4:26 even, 4:26.67. So a very nice lap time indeed. Actually looking through as well, that the rule book itself has to follow that all-important rule that says you're not supposed to, well, you are supposed to perform at least 2 driver changes per race. It's on page 13 of the rule book. Right at the top, it says each team will need to perform at least 2 driver changes per race. These swaps must be completed no later than 15 minutes before the end of the race. For every missed driver change, a team will get a full lap stop and go penalty. And a full lap here at Le Mans is 4 minutes.
Yeah, that's 4 minutes. There's no way that's going to leave you competitive in any way if you fail to meet the demands of the driver change rules. Thomas says in chat, Edward, well, if Hasse can speak Flemish, you can give a history lesson, Edward. There is a certain justice to that. And actually, I feel like with this race in particular, there's so much going on that we should perhaps make a bit of an effort to stay on track and to keep in on the action. But the longer the race, the more chances you usually get to delve into getting sidetracked to all sorts of things. Interesting fact there, Renzo tells us Griffin is basically a mix of Belgian and Thai as well. So that's multinational indeed. It's stretched out a little bit at the head of the field here. Jimmy and Toons, if they're going to keep at it like that, we're going to see how it goes with those driver changes there. It struck me, Edward, that they were a full 3.5 seconds, actually a full 4 seconds almost, quicker on their pit time than Valkyrie competition. That's quite a lot of fuel they haven't taken onto the next run. Maybe planning on going... Well, yeah, I can't really make sense of it.
I have a feeling
that
Julian Tunes actually did maybe short fuel the car a little bit, knowing, of course, that he's probably going to take an extra pit stop at the end. But he's doing this to get track position. He had about 9 seconds to Oscar Pi, and now has already brought that up to 14. So I think he just wanted to get enough space ahead that he was out of the slipstream comfortably and then could start to build a gap. Probably not going to be saving any fuel because he realizes that they will need to make one more stop compared to Valkyrie competition to satisfy those driver change requirements. So there's a little bit of damage actually on the front end of Oscar Pi's car. I'm not sure where exactly he picked that up. We were talking about it, weren't we, Asa, before the broadcast, that I noticed in practice that there were a few cars picking up a little bit of damage there, and I'm thinking it is potentially one of those last two chicanes.
That must be contacted, but with some either a car or a bit of a barrier or something, I believe, because I think it's too far up on the fender around the front light there. I think the damage would sort of travel that far up, if you know what I mean.
I mean, you do look at the cars; it does sit very low at the front.
Yeah, but you're able to pick up damage that's sort of limited to the splitter area down low on the car, where you'd expect it to pick up the knock, and I wouldn't expect it to.
That corner we've just seen there as the wall at the exit of Arnage just stick out a little bit. Might have been.
It could be just a touch in traffic as well. Would probably be Occam's razor would probably lead us to deduct a lot of possible scenarios, and the most likely probably being that they had a slight bit of contact with some piece of car somewhere on track. Would probably fit with losing about, well, I guess they lost about 5 seconds. In the meantime, Kim Behate here in the Flemish Aston 867 has had a problem at the second Mulsanne chicane, and he taps the soft barrier. I think that's a lucky both place and speed, Edward, to do so. With the car looks pretty fine to me. Yeah, pristine, as you say it.
Yeah, very nice.
And at the same time here, in Tete Rouge, that's Kevin van der Wiel, and he's not going to be that lucky. The engine is going to have a major problem, I'm afraid, for Desipit. They were going so well earlier on pace. I think that might have been due to cold tires just coming in too quickly here on board with Van der Wielen. Takes a bit too much curb. The car's bouncing and he comes off to the AstroTurf. Doesn't quite have as much grip. And then the rear end just swings around. Very unlucky. Manages, though, to bring it off of the racing line, it seems. That's a good piece of work. Luckily, it was spread out around him here. And then Peter Kuipers, who's had a problem as well, who just is not able to steer his car at all. And you wonder what happened to that car for it to be misbehaving this badly. This
You can
car is
see
having
actually
a terrible
that-
time here, Edward.
Look at that right-hand front wheel. When you see it come straight on from the exit of this corner, you'll see that it is completely... Look at the camber on it.
Yeah, it's completely biffed. But what happened to... Let's see if we can just look that up in our bit of a system here. But there doesn't seem to be anything that really suggests that there's been a major incident anywhere.
The Ghost of Le Mans did it. Ghost.
Ghosts of Le Mans.
Yeah, spooky. It's the ghostly barriers that just jump out in front of you. Can't avoid them.
All jokes aside, Edward, there's though a heavy piece of contact there.
Big incident. Yeah, big hit, and that's going to have to be a trip to the pits. Of course, the drivers do have a fast repair, which I was interested why.
Hardware failure for Joshua Campfield. As you can just see the wheel turn all the way left very suddenly, and that's probably going to be race over for the Sim District GT4 machine here. Well, it's not the Aston that we see on the picture, I think, but this... You just see, I'm just going to hop back on here as we're on board. There we go. There. And there is no saving such a catastrophic hardware failure, I'm afraid. And that's going to be another casualty as we're closing in on the halfway point of the race. An hour and 15 minutes done here, Edward. Oh, as Jerry Crispin slides all over the place through the Porsche curves. Mind you, none of these leading cars in BLC 3 took tires. And I think pretty much everybody else did.
Actually, Hasser, I think they did take tires
Did
because...
they take tires? Oh yeah, they did.
Yes, interestingly
yeah,
enough,
they did.
tires are taken at the exact same time that the fuel is taken in the GT4 class. It's different in GT3s.
They have different... Yeah, that's true.
And I think different in Porsche Cup. But the TCRs and the GT4s, because they typically race together and usually in the same series, they have the same rulings, the IMSA Pilot Challenge rulings or something, where it's you can take fuel at the same time that you take tires. So it's pretty much a no-brainer not to have a fresh pair of boots every single time you stop. The insights of being a GT4 driver, Hasser. It's
yeah, that's true, Edward.
It's these little things that you can pick up and bring to the broadcast. It's why I need to start racing a little bit more so I can keep feeding back information onto these broadcasts that I love to do ever so much. And speaking of loving this episode so much, it seems that Scott McFall is loving life out on track at the moment, just a little bit faster than second placed Oscar Pye at this moment in time. So needs to continue getting a bit of a move on if he wants to secure a podium come the end of the race. But after, of course, taking tyres at the most recent stop, I believe, it's going to try and see him in good stead come the end of the race.
Crispin here on the tail of Thomas Stockmans. We saw him sliding about before.
These two really need to work together, Haas, because otherwise Gunn Klopman is going to vanish up the road. You can see already nearly 6 seconds clear.
Yeah. Yeah, Koen Klopman is flying up there. He's really putting it to the two other drivers. We're in that three-way battle. It's more like a battle for second at the moment. Of course, it could very well turn into a three-way scrap in time. You can see just the cars having to really... or the drivers really having to correct quite a bit there on the exits. Track temp's down to 39 degrees, but the air temp's still 31.
Not going quickly at all, is it?
Oh, it's going to stay up there.
In sim time, but
probably going to stay up there for a bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to... if we're probably not going to see any real sort of darkness here. We might see track temps just cool down enough for it to be that bit more viable to go for the double stints. Of course, it's not really going to make sense for the BLC3 machines, but for everybody else...
I mean, double stint is what we're seeing currently at the front of BLC1, Jimmy and Tunes.
Yeah.
14.6 seconds to Oscar Pye. themselves have a further, 10 or so seconds down to your own Vatlet.
Actually, very good job there from Vatlet to be in that position, but they've also taken a very short stop on their first stop. They did not do a driver change, so perhaps they've taken and accepted that they'll have an extra stop later in the race, because it was a very short stop, about 5 seconds shorter than the one of Jimmy and Toons. That's, of course, put them in a good position, but they are, after all, about 26 seconds down on the race leader. It all comes to all. Here is Lawrence Klotz, who's doing his best to keep up with Hansi Poolmans in the 999, the 992 of Duct Tape Racing Yellow. It's a very nice looking machine as well. Behind that, I would believe, is the BLC 3 battle, and I wonder if that wasn't Matthias Maas. There is Lucas Vainand. Bit of a well-placed picture for him, I'm afraid, as well. And there can be hate, 5th place at the moment for the 867 Aston of Flemish Sim Sports, who, the Kippy Hate, had a spin there. It was a very lucky moment for him in the end. Not obviously not lucky having a spin, but the result of it, with no real lasting damage, it seems, could have been a lot worse.
Oh, there's an incident there, and there's a spinner in the background as well. Was that the car? That wasn't Oscar Pie. That was the other Arnage, not the Arnage, the other Valkyrie car. But then there was an incident. Oh, it was Oscar Pie.
No, it was Oscar Pie.
So there was Oscar Pie, but there was a separate incident as well, a little bit further up the road that I think we heard. There's a little bit of gravel track off of the road as well. So this is Peter Kuipers.
I think that might have cost it. That might have cost it in the beginning. No, that wasn't it, I think. Oh, that's a major one. As they come across one another.
To stay further to the left-hand side there. We'll have another look at that, but first let's watch this from Oscar Pie. Oh, touch of the grass. Rear end goes. Thankfully, there's a soft tyre barrier, but that sort of left-hand side front is going to be a little bit more dinged up than I think it was before. Still, of course, had a little bit of contact there, but I think it's slightly worse shape now. Yeah,
it's pretty bad. It seems that he will have lost quite a bit of time with that as well. Nicolas Rublar, is in the pits alongside Thomas Layson for their first stops. They've gone deep into this race.
Absolutely, very deep, yeah.
Wow. And that means that Thomas Robin is probably going to get ahead of those two as he's exiting the Porsche curves now. Nuno Henriquez comes in alongside Keanu Borgagnon. I would be very, very, very surprised to see anyone but Thomas Robin leading the race as they all exit the pits. That said, Nuno Henriquez is leaving the pits now. He's not going to make it. Something must have happened there to Robin. Over the course of the stint, and another contact there!
Like
in
that.
4 chicanes.
Something like that.
Flemish Audi on Audi crime, I was about to say. A little bit of a naughty lunge there. I don't think Thomas Robin was really expecting it. He'll be out ahead of Keanu Borgagnon. Okay, been a little bit
much shorter stop there from our large competition, Hasse.
Yeah,
just
that's
looking
true.
at the times in the pits, 35 seconds stationary, almost 50 seconds for Thomas Robin.
So they will, but
AC
we'll expect
eSports. So that was a lot of time, about 15 seconds.
I think we can expect Robin and AC Motorsports to have a comparatively shorter last pit stop if everything goes to plan for them. That said, it's been very chaotic over the last few minutes. There's been another incident here for the Mac Challenge .be machine by DB1, and it's something we've seen before, I think, Edward. Deja vu here. He parks it on the inside, but manages to turn it around. Actually, a surprisingly agile turning circle on the Audi there. Do you expect it to be worse on a GT machine?
Hassa,
Yes.
I am not so sure about what you just mentioned about Nuno Enriquez needing a shorter last stop, because those cars still need to pit 2 further times, if I remember right. Right? Actually, no, they will, because they won't be able to make it till the end. Oh, actually, no, they will need to pit 1 more time, I think. But let's not forget how much earlier Thomas Raban came into the pits on lap 16 compared to lap 18.
They might have
Thomas
started
Raban
on
would have
lower.
burned off a little bit of fuel, whereas Nuno Henriquez saving fuel was able to have a shorter stop to get potentially that same amount of fuel. They might still be running the same amount of fuel, because let's not
Shorter
forget.
stop by 15 seconds. That's a
But
massive amount of time.
I don't think it's going to be as big as we're expecting it to be,
Massive.
because let's not forget Thomas Raban, by pitting earlier, has had more laps out and about on the track since then, burning off the fuel. Nuno Enriquez has less time putting in the fuel. They might be, roughly on similar loads of fuel right now.
And that was the trouble there for Navarro
Bova.
before. We saw that one. Stefan Kermans had a bit of an issue there.
I want to have a look at the with Peter Kuipers again, if we can as well, Hassa, because it looked to be a very strange one that I think needs a second watch.
This one, or was it another one? No, this must have been this one then. My apologies. Yeah, this one. Oh yeah, that wasn't great, was it?
So they're slow coming out of the Porsche curves, and it just doesn't seem to know where to go.
No, and at this point it's already too late. There's nowhere really to go.
100%, unfortunately, on Peter Kuipers there.
It's a massive impact at the rear of the car as well there. I'm afraid the engine looks to have taken a major part of that hit too. And I'm afraid no real surprise to see that Peter Kuipers is still in the pits. Joshua Campfield is in the pits as well. Or is he back out? No, he's not. He said he had that problem with his steering wheel. Michael Holsters is in the pits for SimWorld.be Fast. That's their second pit stop here, Edward. And I wonder, did we see any issue for them? They've taken a driver swap here at this point. They had a very short stop before. And that was Vettel in the car, so they had to make this driver change as well. It's hard to say there, Hendrik, because as soon as the BMW goes to that side, he also sort of has to recognize that someone's coming through, but it can be difficult to know sometimes. And I guess with the GT Force as well, there is a bit of downforce, but it's not a lot, to be honest, and it's mostly mechanical grip, which quickly runs out, especially when you need it the most. Could just have been a matter of understeer and poor timing, miscommunication between, of course, I know there isn't any spoken communication with the drivers, but a misunderstanding maybe rather.
Yeah, I think it's down to misunderstanding. You need to be very, very clear with your intentions from just the position of your car, because, of course, you can't communicate. You can't shout out of the window and have the other driver hear you. You need to use the body language of the car and the attitude of where you're approaching the other car, basically, to make sure it's, no contact's going to happen. And unfortunately, I think there was just that little bit of misjudgment, miscommunication, and like you said, unfortunately, it's not worked out for them after such a promising potential start to the race. The podium in their sights, it doesn't seem to be going their way, but as you can see, top of the screen, class leader is Arnage Competition, and after that little half spin by Valkyrie Competition just a couple laps ago, that gap has really extended now to well over half a minute, 31 seconds, the gap between Jimmy Tunes and Oscar Pye. And to be fair, on Arch Competition, they need that gap, because they will have to take 2 further pit stops to do 2 driver changes. Oscar Pye and Valkyrie Competition, they only need 1 more pit stop, ideally, because I mean, they've already done one of their driver changes. They can easily swap back over, get Jonathan Poulet back in the car and go to the end.
Yeah, you would expect so. They are indeed still in it with regards to expect to be the overall strategy calls. I don't know if they've got some ace up their sleeves here in an Irish competition. They should be. That could have been a slowdown. That was very close.
I think that was just about all right, you know.
Yeah, he got off it. He got off it well enough. They really slackened the track limits down at Tete Rouge and a few other places here at Le Mans quite considerably, to the point where it's now actually enjoyable to drive around the corners. And it's been for a long time, essentially. It was really, really punishing with not the 1Xs that you would pick up, but specifically the slowdown penalties that iRacing applies if you've taken any liberties, mostly on exits, because that's usually where you gain the most speed. You can, of course, also pick them up by cutting corners, which we've seen actually a fair few times happen down at the Dunlop chicane as well. Jimmy Antunes is flying at the moment, maybe knowing that to have any chance, they need to go lightning quick in this phase of the race. Edward May, we're halfway through this round 3 of the virtual Belcar series here from Le Mans. It's been an enthralling hour and a half to commentate upon already. And if the rest of the race is going to be anywhere near as good as the opening half here, we're in for a real blast. So I think my best advice to anyone out there watching will be don't move a muscle and don't go anywhere. I think we've had some fantastic racing on display here tonight. Still within 10 seconds, the top 3 in BLC 3, led by Koen Klopman and the Simtech E team, ahead of an Irish competition. The number 100 BMW being lapped by Oscar Pai in the Valkyrie eSports machine, and then Jerry Crispin for Traxxas by JWS Motorsports, and the 25 machine. Been very much involved in that lead battle in BLC 3. I think, Edward, so far, along with the lead battle in BLC 1 that I'm afraid has fallen apart as the race has gone on, this one still somewhat close. It's been the battle of the race so far. At least for me it has, and I wonder, has it been so for you as well?
Absolutely. Those 3 cars battling for the lead was absolutely immense, and seeing those 2 cars go side by side, not just once but twice on different occasions through the Porsche curves, was absolutely immense. Great respect between Simtech E team and the Traxxas by JWS Motorsports team, while Thomas Stockman's, or rather Arnage competition, were just sitting back at the time and watching and waiting in the wings. They seem to have gotten some reward from it, being from 3rd up into 2nd, but after putting it on pole, that BMW is going to be hungry to take the race victory after all of the promise and potential performance they showed during qualifying. Although, of course, Koen Klopman is looking to repeat the feat that we saw him do last time out. Simtech E-Team, of course, winning BLC 3 at Watkins Glen. I don't know if they actually won the first round. Spa was so long ago that it's completely fallen out of my brain what happened there. I will just double check. And yes, they did win at Spa. So they're going to try and make it 3 from 3, you know, Hasser. And to be fair, I wouldn't be too surprised if they did, based on their pace that they're showing at the moment.
No, very much so. For a long time there, Edward, we saw a good fight between the 999 and the 55, didn't we? That 55 machine of Robin Maas is now 45 seconds up the road on Hansi Pullmans. Although the pit stop times was very similar. So on the last 10 laps of the race here, they've really gone well ahead here, and they've actually clawed back the lead machine as well. Robin Maas here really, really putting on the pressure. So that's an interesting one. And the Porsche Cup cars are closing in on one another. Less than 5 seconds between Griffin and Robin Maas. The GT machine here by Red Ant. Red Ant, a nice little wordplay on the surname Redant. And of course, that flings my mind back to 80s/90s Belgian Flemish pro cyclist Hendrik Redant. He was a big man indeed, a man for the classics. A sidestep, if any. Here, Babo Fallen comes in for an odd-timed pit stop as well, Edward. This must be some of the strategy as well. They went through without a driver change early days as well, and here halfway through the race, well, they have to make 2. So this is a late time to have the first one here.
I think they're going just for the offset, Hester. I think they're trying to put themselves offset for this phase of the race and then getting back on right at the end to try and maybe catch out some drivers that maybe didn't expect to be racing them come the end of proceedings. Meanwhile, we've got this fight continuing on. Morris Glutz in behind. Got our Hansi Polmans, a regular feature in the virtual Belcar. Listen to the downshift. Look at this, just how mechanical it sounds. Oh, beautiful, beautiful sound. A bit of kit there is.
I'll tell you what,
Edward, just at the front of our shot does not sound beautiful at all. It'll look beautiful. It's got a lot of damage there.
We'll hang on We'll hang on to the outside of these cars until we get to the start finish. We're going to do a lap with this battle and with these two, and I'm going to talk you through it. I think most of you will know the track. I know it as well, quite well by now. Not to say that I'm any sort of alien here, but I've done my fair share of Le Mans 24-hour races.
I am. I love Le Mans here. I
absolutely too as well. It is
around here.
It is my favorite track as well, and I tend to be much quicker around here than I normally am. It seems to be above my level here, punching above my weight, even though I'm a bit of a heavyweight. I've just actually lost quite a bit of weight here over the last few months, Edward. If we're getting into the personal stuff, I've been getting back out riding quite a lot this year, and I've lost about 10 kilos in the last 2 months. I'm trying to drop off some more before I head off to Spain here at the end of August to ride the mountains of La Rioja for a few weeks. Anyway, enough about that. But Le Mans certainly a special track. But I won't let you talk him through that. What I want to do it myself. I want to have my Alan McNish moment as we go on board here with Lawrence Klutz and the braking zone to the double Ford chicane, left, right, and then left, right. Most people will stay in second for this one. Clip the curb, right and left, and then exit onto the start-finish straight to start your lap of the 24-hour circuit. Of course, we're doing 3 hours here tonight, but that makes the circuit no less special here. Turn 1, off the throttle, just coasting through, and then heavy on the brakes up the hill into Dunlop. Always difficult to crest that portion of the hill and get their exit right. So easy to lose control underneath the bridge, down towards the S's, up through the gears, up into 5th here in the Porsche Cup, and down into 3rd, heavy on the brakes. Not too much of that inside curb, but the Porsche Cup very stable through the S's. Careful of that little crest there as well. Into Tete Rouge, off the throttle, 4th gear, and then heavy on the throttle on the first part of the Mulsanne Straight. One of the Lambos coming through here. And it might just have a hard time overtaking the Porsche Cups. As I think it does indeed just disappear to the background here. Down towards the first chicane, looking for the markers on the left-hand side. You want to brake around the 200-meter marker, I think, maybe a little bit later even. GT3's very late on the brakes, of course, no ABS. Right, left, right through the first chicane exit, all important yet again. Onto the second part of the Mulsanne Straight. Lawrence Klutz with a very good opportunity actually to try and squeeze past the Flemish machine here. He's pushed on towards the very outside of the track, as we've seen by tradition almost in GT cars of late. And this is going to be a battle into the second chicane. uphill here, you tend to be able to brake quite a lot later, especially because the speed is that much lower coming into it as well. No overtake for Lawrence Klutz, but a good exit. So a slightly easier exit, although also easy to get it wrong. We see a lot of accidents happen there in the second chicane. Now coming over the crest that was flattened after 1999, once we saw those Mercedes CLR machines that took off and down into the braking zone of Mulsanne corner, braking just before the kink, aiming for second gear, first gear, and then all about the exit yet again for the long run down towards Indianapolis. Favorite place for overtaking as well, because you've got the longest uninterrupted straight here, although you get into it from very low speed, but you can get a huge run on the car in front here through Indianapolis and Anage, and then the run down to Porsche curves, not that difficult to defend compared to some of the other ones. Early on the brakes, then coasting through the quick kink down into second gear for the slow part of Indy. Use the banking there on the left hand side, don't want to miss that. And then make sure you don't enter Anage too quickly. And again, all about exit speed here at Le Mans. The run down towards the Porsche curves, which is usually a set of corners that really require bravery, and as such it does separate the greater from the lesser. Nice line there from Lawrence Klutz, very tidy, keeping it in fifth gear. And then down into fourth here. Again, a lot of coasting. Of course, these Porsche Cup cars maybe needing a little bit more braking input to steer the car than the LMP2s that I would be used to driving around here. Full gas out through karting, and that's completed let up once we've done the fourth chicane, which, by the way, is a very easy place to make mistakes, and we've seen a lot of races thrown away here as well. And it's, oh, the commentator's curse, if ever I've seen it, Edward. I should not have said that, should I?
What have you done, Hassel? What have you done?
I'm so sorry.
A live
to duct tape
apology. Yeah.
To duct tape racing, my apologies. It was going so well. Oh, somebody clip that. That is, yeah. I have never, I've seen the curse being applied as such before, but that was certainly one of the more, very straightforward. Oh, Robin Maas has taken the lead away from GT Racing. That's 5 seconds. Gone away in the blink of an eye. I wonder if there's been a problem for Griffin ahead. Pit stops as well for Jonathan Poulet. And for Carlos Dieguez as well, who's out and running. They've had their pit stop as we were riding on board with the Porsche Cup machine there before. Scott McFall is now in the lead of this race, which is quite interesting, to be honest.
Now they need to save a lot of fuel in District 5 eSports, because if they want to make it till the end of the race with only one further pit stop, they will need to make that fuel in that car last, well, 20 minutes longer, around about that length of time, 18 minutes longer. Carlos Dieguez coming through. They need to make sure that their final pit stop is no later in the race than 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Yeah. Nick Stope is in there for SimWorld.be Rapid. That's thrown quite a bit of it's really thrown it up into the air now. Scott McFall leading by 11 seconds. And then only 6.7 seconds between Dieguez and Jonathan Poulet at this point. So it could all come back together here with just an hour and 18 minutes left to race here. Ricardo, well, if you're, I'm not gonna get into it. We're gonna, usually people get mad if we don't show their cars. It's very rare that we have drivers popping up and and saying, "Oh, please don't bestow the curse on us. Don't show our car on stream." of course, it's not a thing. It's like if you claim to control the weather because you go outside and say it will start raining, and then it starts raining, and you happen to live in a place in the world like Denmark where it rains a lot. Chances are that once in a while you're gonna be right, and then for a lot of the times you aren't.
Good to see, though, plenty of people getting involved in the YouTube chat. Good to see Don Holloway there cheering for Vibe eSports. Well done. You've arrived a little bit too late to see the Vibe eSports red car in BLC 1 that was in contention, was leading the race at one point. Then, as the pit stops came through, was in, I believe, second or third place. Can't quite remember now. It's been a lot happening since then, but the main issue that happened to them was engine blow up in the pits. Some weird mechanical fault seemed to befall them, and that's basically put them out of the race, because while they were in the pits, they obviously unticked the fast repair, saved it for a different point, and then weren't able to repair that damage. So that's seen them fall out of the race. Big shame. Meanwhile, watching Thomas Rabanne actually lose a little bit of time to Nuno Henrique. So BLC 4 is starting to be very interesting, especially considering the difference in pit stops, Hassa. Might allow us a very close finish come the end of the race.
Yeah, I was thinking about it too, and we really need to keep a keen eye on how the race develops in this phase as well. Coming into the final hour, there might be some upsets will be happening in all of the classes here. Very aggressive on the curves there. Keanu Borgagnon pushing hard. He is about, I think, 22 seconds down the road from Thomas Robin. So BLC 4 is ever so slightly spread out. We've had a problem here with Jeremy Hessels, I'm afraid. In the dynamics, car late on the brakes, a little too late as well, as he cuts through the chicane. Just about keeps it under control on the exit as well. That's going to be a major slowdown. But nothing more than that. It could have been much worse in the end. The number 9 car that came through is, at the moment, actually the car they were battling for position. This is Jean van Liemt.
Even on pace as well, from first down to second in the BLC 3 class. Kuhn Kloppman and Thomas Stockman's just a couple of tenths off of each other, when you consider that a lap time here in those cars is 4 minutes and almost 20 seconds. To be only 2 tenths off of each other shows just how evenly matched these two drivers are. So you might be seeing that BMW and Aston Martin at the front of BLC3 start to come together a little bit closer before too long. Jordi Hanssens and Alexander Reis taking over from their respective cars. Actually, no, Steven Verhofst now behind the wheel of the Lamborghini that is in 5th place in BLC1 class. But at the moment, Scott McFall leads this race by Simdistrict Vibe eSports GT3 Green off of the podium for much of the early phase of this race. But for now, they seem to be carrying on with a good little turn of speed, and also something that we've always seen Simdistrict Vibe eSports do very well is save that fuel even when they don't have cars in front to slipstream off of.
Look here, what happened to the BLC? Oh no. And this is the ART car, the 55. Ricardo, you jinxed it yourself, I'm afraid. Because we had nothing to do with this one. I will take no responsibility for what happened to Robin Mars there. Just another look there, just too heavy on the throttle. On the exit of Anash, just tapping the barrier. That is a hard barrier. Oh, on the grass there. No traction control, of course, on the BLC2 Porsche Cup machines. So very tricky to get it off the grass. But he does get it rolling again. He lost the lead and is now trailing Griffin in with it by about 10 seconds or so. There he is entering the 4 chicanes. He's really pushing on. That's the meat in that Audi GT3 sandwich. It's going to be pressing on to try and regain that lead. The red Vibe eSports car had some kind of issue. And I think a blown engine, but caused by what, Edward? We weren't really able to figure out. It all looked very mystical. Someone was speaking about getting the mystery machine out there in chat. I think, if anywhere, we need the mystery machine to get on to solve a riddle or a mystery indeed. That'll be there. Maybe a few Scooby snacks as a reward there. If you can solve it. Because really, we still really don't know what happened to that Vibe Sports GT3 red machine.
We know that the engine decided to give up the ghost and just completely bite the dust, but other than that, no clue. We didn't know what caused the engine to explode, other than they were in the pits. The car went down off of the jacks after taking tyres, and then it just erupted, basically. There's no other word for it. It just kind of vanished in a plume of smoke, and that was it. There was no more engine. The car was just sat there all by itself, all alone, and can't get back up to racing speed now because, funnily enough, Hassa, you do need an engine to run a car.
Yeah, that is very much true. And with the regards to the GT4 machine, that was a pedal or clutch issue to make the engine blow. Yeah, that would probably make sense, especially in the pits. It doesn't take a long time of keeping the engine.
Sounds like a clutch problem potentially.
Yeah.
Maybe something with the wrong gear selected or something, or it maybe dropped from.
Yeah, it could have been
whatever reason. They might have selected 6th gear, and then all of a sudden instantly dropped down into 1st, which
that
would probably do it.
That would have killed either engine or gearbox pretty immediately. Yeah. And then we saw that wheel failure for the GT4 Vibe machine has really not been the night so far, except for the fact that Sim District is still leading, with Scott McFall setting the pace by quite a margin at the moment, Edward. 2 seconds a lap quicker than Carlos Diegues and Jonathan Poulet, who's running in behind. That gap's up to 16 seconds now. They were last in, though, on lap 14. We're on lap 28. So you gotta wonder, those 10 minutes, everybody seems to gonna have that extra pit stop anyways at the end. Unless they're really extending heavily on this stint, which I don't know if they are, if they will be able to pull out a 16-lap stint here. They might just. We'll have to see. But they would have to do something in that regard to get closer, much closer to the final hour. Unless, they're gonna... If not, I think they're gonna struggle with the lead on strategy, and it might just turn out to be the right strategy run by, both Anash and Valkyrie. By the way, Valkyrie actually gaining on the Anash car as well. That was 6.5 seconds last time we checked. It's underneath 6 seconds now. At least it was as they were coming into the Mulsanne corner. The relatives here at Le Mans has a tendency to be a little bit dodgy as well. So seems to jump up and down. Sometimes it seems a little bit irregularly. I think it's... it was explained to me at some point to have something to do with the sort of line that the car takes, and that the relative sometimes takes to expect it to go in a straight line to where the next car is, or something in that regard. I'm not quite sure. It's something.
Interestingly, though, Hassa, I've just noticed you were talking about the strategy in BLC1 about which car might come out on top.
Someone just went straight there.
Something just completely derailed my train of thought. That looked like the Dynamics car, which it was, but they get back up and running very quickly. Yeah. So thankfully that was not a concern for too long. And Carlos Diegues and Arnaud's competition, they have not taken tyres so far this race. I believe we saw the Sim District car go up and take tyres on their first pit stop. So they're going to go for the strategy of pit for tyres at the beginning of the race and then use those tyres for the last double. I think Arnaud have gone for the other strategy of take the tyres at the second stop of the race and take those to the end. So maybe we will see some interesting strategy before the tyres and see which one's going to come out on top. Scott McFall into the pits, relinquishing the lead of the race to Carlos Dieguez. Into the pits he goes, handing over most likely to his teammate Olivier Wiltink, who we've seen in the YouTube chat, seems all ready to go. Got good confidence in the car and his teammate as well, saying that he's still in the fight for the lead. We will see just how true that is, though, in a few moments' time. What is the gap when they get up to full racing speed, I wonder? Still taking on board the fuel. No tyres taken, so that set will take him till the end of the race. The fuel will most likely not, however. They have done their full driver changes. No more requirements for those cars. If they are able to save fuel and go to the end of the race, they will be able to finish without any penalties being applied to them. Same cannot be said for Poulet or Dieguez.
They have one driver swap still to do, but
They've already done the driver swap.
They've done their first. Boltink has done the. Boltink don't need, but it's true that both Dieguez and Poulet has a driver swap intercom. They will both probably take tires on the next pit stop as well. But them having been in when they were in just a few laps ago, they should be able to go well into the final hour. And as such, they should also avoid any late splash and dash stops, which might befall to Olivier Boltink. But
I still think with the pure out-and-out pace, Dieguez is probably favourite in Dynage competition.
Oh, Poulet's been off! Poulet's off! And what has happened here? Oh, he's lost it at Tete Rouge! Into the wall, just a tap. It's not going to be anything bad. But of course, getting it sorted and straightened, that's going to be a major time loss for Jonathan Poulet.
Very lucky not to pick up some severe damage there, because those Armco barriers are unforgiving, to say the least. We've already seen several drivers make contact with those barriers and have their race ended. What was the... we saw, didn't we, the Aston Martin have a pretty much carbon copy of that, 30 minutes ago?
Yeah.
The Aston Martin of Decipit Racing, that's currently sitting in the pits out of the race, the 209 car. That's, a carbon copy, and thankfully they were able to slow down the car just enough to avoid that same level of damage. But, oh my word, that could have been a very, very nasty shot.
Matthias Ranzani here in the 222 for BSIM Racing S has come through again on Hansi Pullmans. Even despite of that relatively heavy front-end damage, quite impressive to be able to still battle the 999 for position. I was expecting it to be a done deal when I saw there was an overtake that had happened just a few laps ago there for Hansi Pullmans. And in BLC 3, by the way, still an interesting race is going on. Koen Klopman leads Thomas Stockmans. And then, at about identical distance, 5 seconds separating all of these three cars from one another, there is Jerry Crispin. They still have their final pit stops to do as well. They will be aiming to get into that final hour, if they can. Otherwise, it's all about fuel saving to the end of the race. And I think that's what they're doing now as well. They're just trying to set themselves up to at least make it on strategy. And then might they be where they be? Because if you don't make the strategy in terms of the laps you need to make on the fuel that you have in the car, you have to do an extra pit stop compared to anyone. You'll be really poorly off in the end, I'm afraid. Oh, Mohamed Garbi.
Still off, still out of the race, yeah.
Yeah, but he just came into the pits, I think, here not too long ago, Edward. So we see him there, entering. So they had that
They've been in the pits for 2 minutes, so I think they're out. I think they're calling it an evening Hesse.
That might be. they haven't completely pulled out. I think Garby is still in the car. We'll see whether it changes. Diego's now leading Jonathan Poulet and Valkyrie competition by 21.5 seconds. That's going to be very hard, I think, for Jonathan Poulet to claw back. And we can see, I think, by the nature of that incident he had before as well, and Tete Rouge, that was sort of, at least to me, that had all the signs of a driver really, really pushing to the absolute limits to try and claw in that Anage competition car.
Just saw a moment for Jeremy Hessels there in the background, blinking in and out and getting very close to the wall on the left-hand side of the circuit there. I think that might have been a bit of a screen or a hardware issue there, where he just froze on him and was drifting to the left-hand side there.
Is he going to enter too quickly just here? Or? Yeah. Oh, immediately unsettled there. It looks... We see so many times they just go through Anage with no trouble, and then sometimes they're on the curb. If you have too much of that curb on the rear tires, especially as you turn in, there's just going to be no grip whatsoever. It's going to unsettle the car. It's going to turn it around as you try to turn in. You're going to be really, really poorly off if you are close to anyone else, or with anyone else close behind, more specifically. It hasn't been the case for Lucas Vijnen, but he's in the pit lane now. He's come into the pits. That could have been a planned pit stop. They were in last time on... Well, I can't see that because he's in, so that's annoying. But they were in the race for position for quite some time. They're dropping a bit back now, and this is Milan Phaeton's coming in. Now, in terms of time, I would expect this to be a pretty obvious time to come into the pits. On the 2-hour mark of this race, 2/3 of the race now gone. We're into the final hour of the race here at Le Mans for the third race. Well, it is indeed the third race. It's the third round, is what I was going to say, of the virtual Belcar series with the Hesse Römer and the brilliant Edward May in the comms booth. It's been a brilliant race so far. I think that's the best way I can put it. Really exciting, and it still is here. Coming into the final hours, still all to play for. Very hard to call which way it's gonna go. At the moment, it's Diego's in the lead, but they're all on the same amount of pit stops, and it all really comes down to they'll all need.
Stop, won't they?
Yeah, I think they'll all need one more stop, and it all really comes down to just how much time they're gonna spend on that stop.
And that as well will come down to tyres, because I think Diegues and Poulet might opt for tyres, or they might decide just to try and go till the end and hope that they've got enough margin in the tank in terms of their tyre life that they're not going to be eaten up right at the end. Which also Olivier Bolting will have.
You don't want to risk that. It's dangerous to drive around on, that's one thing, but if they reach the end of their life, you're going to get a meatball flag. Go to the pits. Basically, I guess that's sort of like getting a puncture. Something you can't really do in
it does cost you around about 25 to 30 seconds.
That's true.
That is a lot of time lost, especially at this late stage of the race. It's difficult to make up that amount of time on fresh tyres, especially on a circuit where there aren't that many corners to make up that amount of time. But what I was going to say was Olivier Bolting will have the shorter pit stop because he came in on the most recent lap. He came on lap 28 compared to Jonathan Poulet, lap 25, and Carlos Duguez, lap 24.
Going on here for Thomas Robin.
Just a blinking now, I think, as they made their way through Arnage.
Yes, just blinking.
Just a little bit of a moment, but the lap times are looking very good at the moment for Nuno Henriquez and Arnage competition. They are having a very good time of things up in the lead of BLC4. And I'm not sure if we're going to see that shift and change around too much before the end of the race, because it is pretty much almost half a second as the GT4 cars make their stop. BLC3 class leader Kuhn Kloppmann into the pits, getting up onto the Jackson, giving way to Fabrice Cornelis until the end. Thomas Stockmann's now behind the wheel of the Arnage Competition 100, so the third driver in that car taking over. Drivers are, of course, or teams are allowed to have 3 drivers, just it's more the amount of driver changes they're allowed to do. It needs to be twice the driver in the car has to swap around. Cars all up on the jacks, and who's going to come out of this quickest? Cedric Wouters, of course, coming in the latest of that trio battling for the lead. Fabrice Cornelis coming in the earliest from the lead. We expect to see him up and running fairly soon. Taking the fuel and off he goes. Then we keep our eyes on the BMW. When is he going to put the power down and get up and running? We wait. It needs to get going sooner rather than later. Still we wait. And actually, they've been jumped by Cedric Wouters.
They've been well jumped by Cedric Wouters. They still have Thomas Stockmann's in the car. They'll have to change drivers.
The pit time is approaching 1 minute and 20 seconds.
There is Leandro Verde, so he's in, or is he?
What?
Well, he is in the car now. Yeah, what on earth happened to them here? A nice competition. There he exits the pit.
Now he's moving.
You gotta
so
wonder.
There was an issue with the driver change for some reason. I think it was.
And Ben Hicks and Hickmium Motorsports has grabbed 3rd place now. And actually, that's quite incredible, but they've had 2 pit stops. They were last in lap 15 though, so they've had an early stop. And
on account
they're
of the
come in
incident
on
on
this
lap 1,
as well,
let's not forget they were involved in that lap 1 incident through the first Mulsanne chicane.
Very true.
Knocked the, I think it might have knocked their right rear potentially out of alignment, which is why they had to go into the pits to get that repaired. But for now, interestingly enough, what on earth happened to that BMW? Was it maybe the driver wasn't ready to get into the car? Because they were sitting there a while waiting for the driver change to come through. We can see that Leandro, I think we're looking on track, Hasser, is out and about on track.
Yeah.
If we can go and have a look. Yeah, so Leandro, well, they started the car, then handed over to Thomas Stockmann's. They did all of the tyre change and everything, but then Leandro, well, it wasn't getting into the car. So I'm not sure if it was just a case of Leandro, I don't know, was having a bathroom break at the worst possible moment. Because I think that was the reason why the stop was slower.
That's what it looks to have been, yeah. And I don't think I've ever seen that before, but it's to be a first time for everything, I guess. But a bit of a heartbreak moment there. That's kind of thrown their race win chances away, at least for the time being, you'd expect. They're quite a bit of way down on the lead car. 40 seconds to be precise. So they'll take a lot of good luck for them, which translates to bad luck for others, I guess. For them to be able to really get back into it. Another change for a position here. The 999 haven't made it through on the 222. Oh, Pullman's taking all of the track. Not a bit more. Oh, you can see that was Carlos Dieguez as he came out that final bit of the Mulsanne corner. See where the tires have touched the gravel. I think he aided to that a bit as well. That looked pretty lively. Really interestingly, this is the battle for second place. Second place? What has happened? What has happened? to the GTE car. You wondered, did they take a pit stop more than the leaders? Yes, they did. They had their pit stop already. So that's probably why
on
they're
lap
down.
30, whereas Robin Mars, Hans Polmans came in last time on lap 16. So I expect that order to get shifted around Hasser. It's
Yeah.
it's all fine. Nothing is nothing's
take-
gone dramatically wrong for
No.
GT Racing by Red Ant, and I believe they've done their final driver change as well, so they are good to go right up until the end of the race now with Renzo Eulenbroek behind the wheel.
Yeah. I'm expecting them to reclaim the lead of the race once everybody else comes into the pits. That gap to the lead car, however, 1 minute and 42 seconds.
Trying to find as well out Hasser.
I'm not
I've
quite
just sent a
sure,
message in the
actually.
Discord just about what happened in the pits with Thomas Stockmans and, of course, his teammate Leandro Erler for on our competition, because that was a very interesting thing, and I want to try and get to the bottom of this for everyone watching at home, just as well for myself, because I am absolutely baffled.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to get to the bottom of just what happened there. Here into the pits goes Hansi Poelmans, Matthias Ronsani, and also Lawrence Clotes coming in here. So a few cars to be passed in the pits in the easiest way possible, obviously, there for Renzo Eulenbroek. Dialed through the final bits of the Ford chicane. Takes a bit of trust in where the car's going to go to really send it bouncing over the curbs, as we've seen a fair few number of drivers do. But of course, these cars are also a bit heavier than what we usually run at Le Mans, and often the extra weight just tends to add a bit of stability when it comes to being able to take the curbs. Eulenbroek up into second place. Still that minute and 21 seconds up to Robin Mars. We expect Robin Mars to take the pit stop at the end of this coming lap. He's leaving early there, just a little bit, but enough to actually take the position away from Flemish and B-Sim Racing. They all come back basically bunched upon one another. They've had it there. I don't know, did they have a fast repair here? It seems to me, because that car...
Yeah, they fast repaired that.
Yeah, they have indeed. Benjamin De Pape comes back out here. So now a very close battle for third place in
for the
DLC3.
final 10 minutes, not 10, final 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Less than an hour to go, Hasser, and this is getting very exciting here in the VLC2 class. It's all closing in. It's usually after that final stop where we see battles come closer and closer. It's actually Henrik de Grave is involved in a little bit of a battle in BLC3, Hasser, the 867 car, I think, trying to find a way through on Milan Phaetons is Stefan Verhofstadt there.
He's had a major issue here. Oh, that's just around
no contact,
the edge. Yeah. No contact whatsoever, but a heavy impact.
Held
with
tight
the concrete wall, and he comes across. Oh my word, on that Audi. That must have been the scare of the year so far. Because you never know what the driver's going to do.
All of that happened as well because of how tight Stefan Verhofstadt was kept by the Audi. Of course, the Audi was offline, allowed the Lamborghini.
The Papa has had a problem in the 222.
Just got a nice fresh car. Don't damage it.
Let's see whether he... Oh, cold tires. He slides and locks him up.
That was well held.
Yeah, very well held.
Really well held. He felt the car going, locked the rears. In fact, locked all four tires just to keep the car trajectory stable, steady. Slowed it down as well before it hit anything. And then slowly bled off the brakes, allowed the wheels to start spinning and grip up once more. In the grand scheme of things, didn't lose out too much time. Might have been around about 3 seconds, maybe a little bit more because of the long straight afterwards, but in the grand scheme of things, it's much more preferable to lose that amount of time rather than lose complete control of the car and end your race in the tyre barriers.
Definitely so. Renzo Eulenbroek, he's got Olivier Bultink behind him now. Bultink And it's status quo, it seems, in BLC 1. 22 seconds behind Jonathan Poulet. 44 seconds there on Carlos Dieguez. So that's very much as they were.
Still the battle, though, Hasse, with Henrik de Grave, as I was saying earlier.
Oh, where's Renzo? Oh, here's Chris Lowers. He's now on the jacks. So they're taking tires here. It's going to be a longer stop for them. They're going to come out behind GTE Racing, for what I can see.
No, they're not. They're on pit exit now, Hasse. I think
they
we've been caught out slightly.
Yeah.
They are already away. ART Sim Racing on pit exit.
Because they've had to. They could afford to fuel less. Yeah, they could afford to fuel less, given that there's only 47 minutes of the race remaining.
Though there was a lot of time saved. You can see that the pit stop taken by Chris Lowers, they spent basically 40 seconds stationary. Joel Olenbroek spent 1 minute and 5 seconds stationary. So maybe
damage. Maybe
they took a little bit of fuel on board. They maybe also, while Renzo Olenbroek took all 4 tires. Potentially, we saw Chris Lowers and ART Sim Racing only taking maybe the front tyres or maybe the rears, depending on which get worn more. Maybe that was a strategic decision to only take either the front end or the rear end or the left side or the right side of tyres. Very interesting stuff here on display in the strategy, but the pace now needs to come from Renzo Olenbroek and GTE Racing by Red Ant, who have led this race for so long. To lose out right now would be heartbreaking, but a masterstroke of strategy from ART Sim Racing. It could be close, though, till the end of the race, Hasse. Can't wait to see how this one unfolds. And this is the fight we were seeing or talking about earlier. Milan Phaetons and Henrik de Grave. I think Henrik de Grave tried to make the position stick, but wasn't quite able to get through on the BMW, so now needs to wait a little while longer. As Nuno Henriquez, funny enough, is actually up the rear end of Yellow Stratton, GT4 and TCR battling away, but of course Nuno Henriquez is not going to be able to match that pace and comes into the pits, funny enough, to give way to his teammate for the final pit stop and final driver change of this evening's race. Quentin Greeners is where the attention will inevitably shift to as he slides the rear end out through Indianapolis, properly pushing. Doesn't look like it, of course. The front wheel drive cars are difficult to properly determine how quickly they are properly razzing it, as we have a replay here for Belcar. This was into the Dunlop chicane, onto the brakes, not braking hard enough evidently, and going off track, looping it around, going into a half spin, going for a trip through the kitty litter, losing out on several seconds as well. Don't think any track positions were lost, but several moments thrown down the drain there, Hasse.
Yeah. So looking here at the gap, it's 14 seconds there between Chris Lowers and Renzo Erlenbroek, then another 47 down to Martin Dickens. But there's a very close fight, though, between these two. Of course, De Pape, at that moment, he's fallen back. Lost 5 seconds on the battle for third place. But it's on for the Lidl BLC 2. It's very much on here for the final podium spot as well. And then here in BLC 1, things can still happen as well. Because they all have to come in for another pit stop at some point. At least so we expect. They were in last time on lap 24.
Yeah, unless Olivier Bolting can fuel save like an absolute demon.
He won't be able to claw back 15 minutes of running. He would need to claw back. And they weren't able, because I think they pitted in around 5 minutes to the hour. I don't think they were able to run an hour. But I don't think they were able to run an hour in the first place.
I think the first stint was a little bit shy of an hour. So if Olivier Bolting, I mean, we know Olivier Bolting is really good at fuel saving. We've seen time and time again in this season and, of course, in previous championships I've had the joy of commentating on the Dynamics Endurance Championship. He has been an absolute monster at saving the fuel, both himself and Scott McFall, who were the eventual champions of that series, partly down to their pure pace, but also down to their very smart strategy decisions, winning every single race in that championship. Just shows how good they are when it comes to these longer style races. As we follow now Philip Vliegen on board right behind Martin Deckens as they make their way through past that mark of traffic. That is, of course, the Flemish Simsports Black 867 Aston Martin. Further up the road, we can see, of course, the BMW that, as I mentioned, Henrik de Grave was trying to get through and past just a little while earlier, but like out of the traffic has actually lost out a little bit of time now. That gap extended just to over a second in BLC3, so the traffic allows these battles to ebb and flow. Your own battlet now taking over Simworld.be Fast Car. Nick Stoop coming through in the Simworld.be Rapid. So Fast, not as quick as Rapid, but Rapid will, of course, need to make their pit stops very, very soon, in potentially around about 10 to 5 minutes time. We'll, of course, see them right up until the end of the race. I think all of the drivers, all of the teams tonight have, or at least are, on track to satisfy the requirement of 2 driver changes.
Slow down
actually Henrik de Grave, and that looks like a slowdown from Milan Phaetons,
definitely
coming off of Tetra Rouge.
Look at the breaking the toe as well to see if he can just maybe break the slipstream on the BMW. Didn't quite seem to work out there for Hendrik de Grave. Martin Deckens here. Still holding on to that third place. Philip Vliegen, though, clawing back the 10th on the straights. He's not going to be close enough for a move into the second chicane here. But if you can get the run through it, he will be close enough to strike. Maybe in the Mulsanne corner, probably wiser to sit off and wait till the run into Indianapolis. A good run out of the corner there for Deckens. Takes back a 10th or so through the chicane, but it's half a second now, and you can just see it tick down when you look at the relative. There is the delta, if you will. It's not going to be close enough here, though. So the Grave passed on Milan Phaetons. That was sort of expected. Into the pits comes Carlos Diegues here, though. And this is going to mark the opening moment, so to say, of an interesting period of racing. They need to do these pit stops at this time, and they do it relatively early. Diegues in here. They were in on lap... I think they went in a bit earlier.
I saw actually, Hassett, just from that, if we go back about a few seconds, that's the bit of front end damage picked up through the chicane. Jonathan Poulet, the car was fine, and then we just saw a little bit of a bump through the curbs. So this was Carlos Diegues, and then look at this car, perfectly pristine. This was probably where we saw the damage picked up earlier, Hassett. So it wasn't from a car, it wasn't from a barrier. I was right the first time. It was
indeed.
From those curves. I'm going to see it here. The first chicane is perfectly fine, not too high, too aggressive. But then this second one, watch the second bump.
Yeah, it's on landing from the second bump. The compression. He will record problems with his shifter. His pedals, I guess, on the wheel. Not reacting. I've had that issue myself on my G29, and it took completely, not just taking apart the wheel, but the microconductors inside of the wheel as well, cleaning it with a bit of sandpaper. That seemed to freshen up the contact surface, and now they're working again. But it's a really, really frustrating issue to have, and potentially a very, very big problem, because it can really offset the car and make it behave so different from what you expect. We've seen quite a lot of issues generally on the technical side for drivers with their own hardware hits now, also more than you'd usually see for a race like this. And a lot of drivers having had some really bad luck. As I realized, we're still on a replay here. There's no reason for that. So Jonathan Poulet now leads, but he has a pit stop more to do than Jimmy Antunes. Same goes for Olivier Boulting. It's about a 17-second gap there on Antunes, which I'm afraid, unless Boulting can go all the way to the end here, it's not going to be enough. That's going to be a very late tire for Boulting. Oh, that was never going to be a good decision, I'm afraid, but he's really, that's a decision you make under heavy pressure. You would be in this phase of a race like this, really trying to make sure you pass the traffic as quickly as possible, but that was so close to, it could have been a race ender there. That was not even, that was Cedric Wouters second at the moment in BLC 3. Leandro Verde there still in third, but he's half a minute down on this car. This car at the same time has lost more time to the Simtech E team, leading there Fabrice Cornelis, 14 or 13 and a half seconds now.
Just watching as well this battle, it's very interesting to see the pit stops coming through, and it seems to me that Fabrice Cornelis and Simtech eating yet again a bit of a masterstroke here at the top of BLC 3 could be likely to make it. 3 from 3 wins in 3 rounds this season, and what a performance it has been from this entry. Really quick, really consistent as well. Both drivers, it's difficult to pick one that's faster than the other, which is a good sign for a well balanced and properly formidable duo to go out and take these race wins.
Yeah, definitely. But it's a very proven combo. Fabrice Cornelis, Cone Clubman, and as we've seen, anything from a Radical to this machine to a GT3 or whatever they're in, they're going to be absolutely rapid and very consistent, very smart. The class of the field on so many occasions, and just really a hard team to beat. They make so few mistakes, and even when they've made a few mistakes here and there, they've been able to come back from it so well.
And Haas, we do have an update from BLC 3 and that Arnage competition BMW. As my internet decides to have a bit of a moment, I think we're back now. Okay, bit of an update on the Arnage competition BMW. If you're there, Hassa.
Yeah, I'm listening.
So Leandro had some power outages, so he was too late to take over, and they lost about 30 seconds in the pits, but they're still within a shot of the podium, so it's not all over yet, but losing those 30 seconds has really brought them out of that fight for the lead, and also most likely P2.
Yeah, that's painful, because they would have been in second place on Delta time with a gap of under 30 seconds to Cedric Wouters. So that's a hard one to... It's a hard nut to swallow, I think, for an Arnage competition in the BMW. Losing 30 seconds in a class that competitive is going to cost you something. Here's Martin Deckens, at the moment, extending the advantage quite a bit, actually, to Philip Fliegenen behind for Duct Tape Racing, and he's trying to consolidate, I think, the third place for Flemish SimSports Yellow in BLC 2. Of course, this could still change in most regards, but at the same time, in the lead here, the 55 of Chris Lauwers. What happened to Erlenbroek there? That looks a little bit strange to me. It looks like Renzo Erlenbroek. I don't know why we don't see... There's no connection to him, so it's a very long blink, and it doesn't look too good for Renzo Erlenbroek at the moment.
Oh dear,
I think that might just be a disconnect for GT Racing and Renzo Erlenbroek. It is what it looks like at the moment, I'm afraid.
Let's have a look. I'm just waiting to see that horrible yellow text on the iRacing text chat
Yeah.
of Renzo Eilenbroek. Throughput fell to unacceptable level or connection dropped to upload packet loss. Renzo Eilenbroek connection dropped due to upload packet loss. There we go. Renzo Eilenbroek out
Another casualty.
of this race.
Yeah.
Griffin is immediately there, waiting in the wings, waiting for the car to be towed down through into the pits.
That's going to be... They're out of it.
They are completely out of it and potentially out of the podium as well because of how close the field is. That might see them go
well off the podium there.
Well off. Yeah, that could see them go from the potential of a race victory to barely any points. That is absolutely heartbreaking. And Hans Bollman's in the Discord perfectly describing, I think, everyone's emotions at the moment. It does suck. I'm not going to use the extra word that Hans used, but you can fill in the gaps. Hans obviously very upset for one of his fellow racers there, and I think we can all echo that because it was a perfect race up until that point, and it's completely out of his hands.
Yeah, that's such a shame. That is such a shame. Here into the pits comes Jonathan Poulet. That's momentarily going to hand the lead over to Olivier Boltink, who's actually extended the gap. It seems at least down to Jimmy Antunes, who might have made a bit of contact there. At least the car ahead of him did. It was one of the BLC 4 machines.
Yeah, I think that was Kenneth Rankin, but I think he's fine. Those TCRs are built like bricks.
Yeah, definitely. They can take a bit of a beating, and more than most will be able to.
Yeah.
That's certainly for sure. Jimmy Antunes.
Jonathan Poulet into the pits and not exiting the pits yet, so Jimmy Antunes will come through ahead.
But only just, it seems. That's actually that must be annoying, Poulet, to bits and pieces with the incident that he had at Tete Rouge, because without that, 7 seconds, I think Jonathan Poulet would have been ahead of Jimmy Antunes. The race is very much still on, though, much closer into the final half hour than we might have expected here. And then Olivier Boltink, sort of the dark horse here for Sim District Live eSports GT3 Green, the 45 car here, still in with a shout. 18 seconds is not a long time, but they won't have to spend a long time in the pits either.
The pit lane limiter is quite slow here at Le Mans, though. It isn't a long pit lane, but it is slow, so that might work against Olivier Boltink if he needs to pit. I mean, he's got a lot of time to play with there, Hassa. Nearly 20 seconds back to Jimmy Antunes. He, if he wants to, can bleed a lot of time per lap, saving that fuel. Potentially, looking at that gap, you've got half an hour, lap times around about 4 minutes for these guys. Trying to work it out in my brain. How many laps is that left? I cannot do maths. I am absolutely abysmal. Is that 8 laps?
Yeah, I think that's sort of eight
or so laps.
Yeah, isk.
And
off the top of my head.
20 divided by 8 is 2 point something or other. So he can afford to lose basically 2 point something or other seconds a lap, saving fuel if he wants to. Which is a lot of time and could result in a lot of fuel being saved. I'm not sure if it will be enough to go till the end, but if it is...
But he's extending the gap at the moment down to Antunes. It's up to over 19 seconds now.
There's two different things that he can do. He can either try and extend that gap and hope that he's got enough in hand through the short splash and dash at the end, but
that's, I don't know. In 19 seconds, there's going to be nowhere near.
You do lose a little bit of time entering the pits, don't you? And you lose enough time going through it because of how slow it is.
See, 37 seconds, it seems. It's the net time lost just for going through the pits without a stop.
But then, of course, let's not forget you aren't completely stationary during that time when you're going through the pits.
No, that's true. But
So if we think it's around about what you said, 30 seconds,
37.
37 seconts. That
Yeah,
is,
the
of
pit
course,
lane time is 1:10, and then the
that's,
pit
of course,
time of 33.
Okay, so pit lane time. Got to work it out now. We're doing maths on the fly here. So pit lane time is the time completely, including the stoppage. So the time that they spend not stopped also accounts for them slowing down and accelerating. So if we get rid of that amount of time, slowing down and accelerating, going to stop, then getting up from the standstill, bring that to about 30 seconds. Then if you add the fact that Olivier Bolting isn't standing still but still moving, he's coming into the pits
Yeah,
now.
he's coming in
that
now.
could be around about 20 seconds just from going through the pits. If it was a drive-through penalty, he's going to take a little bit of fuel on board, so he might pop out just in behind Jimmy Antunes, but there might not be a whole lot in it.
But he's gonna be close enough to challenge. Yeah, that's true.
Our eyes on Jimmy Antunes. He's going to be ahead of Poulet, I think, but definitely behind Jimmy Antunes. Shouldn't be much, but we'll have a look now for Antunes. Where is he on circuit?
He's
just coming up towards the chicanes now, coming out of them.
There he is, passing.
He goes.
Yeah, through.
So we're about right for the drive-through, putting him pretty much on par with Antunes, losing about 20 seconds. Needs to wait his turn. In fact, he isn't ahead of Jonathan Poulet. I was completely off the mark there. And he's still stationary. He's losing actually a decent amount of time now.
Has to run for 25 more minutes. And I can see he was just pushing to the end of it. Of course, with that kind of time left, there was no way he was going to make any sort of fuel-saving work to that extreme. But he's spent less time on this final stop than any of the cars he was chasing. His problem is that he's still half a minute behind Antunes. He's 23.5 seconds down on Jonathan Poulet. Into the pits comes Nick Stope for his final stop. Jeroen Vatlet is going to come through up into fourth. Matty Sufi is probably not going to go through in the Audi, Flemish Audi there. But the order into the final 25 minutes in BLC1 now, I think with all pit stops taken care of. The Sanage competition leading Valkyrie competition, Sim District, Vibe, eSports GT3 with SimWorld.be Fast, followed by SimWorld.be Rapid. That's the top 5 in BLC1 and BLC2. ART Sim Racing leads Flemish Sim Sports Yellow. Duct Tape Racing is third ahead of B Sim Racing. And then the stricken car of GT Racing in fifth place there, now driven by Griffin in Wisset. In BLC3, the Simtech E-Team and Fabrice Cornelis leads Traxxas by JWS Motorsports. It's Anash competition and the 100 BMW in third ahead of Traxxas sister car, the 23 machine and Robbie Janssens, with Hendrik de Grave and Flemish Sim Sports Black in fifth. Nicolas Rubila leads for Anash competition in the 18 car in BLC4, though ahead of AC Motorsports Esports AM. Thomas Leysen for Flemish is third ahead of Kenneth Franken in B-Sim Racing by FRT's number 19 Hyundai. And actually, I'm just looking at it, they've all done all of the pit stops they should. Seems to have been a really good race for Anash, who somehow actually managed to overtake the AC car. At some point, we hadn't really noticed it, I think, Edward. I wonder if they've had an incident here or something. At some point, seems sort of scratched to me, this car. Well, I'm not quite sure. I don't look at these cars that often. But they seem to be going so well early on that it's just a surprise to see anyone ahead of the 188 here.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, it was just more Thomas Robin not quite being to grips with the car and the track as much as his teammate Corentin Guinness, who, as we can see, just based on the lap times, is setting them alight at 26.78, much quicker than Nicola Rubila, who is in the 28s. I don't know if there's enough time left in the race for him to bring that gap all the way back down again, but I mean, there was some very, very good lap time was put on by Corentin Guinness now. Flashing the lights. I think he knows he's on stream. Hello, mate. You're having a good time out there. It's just about bringing it home now and securing the podium.
So it would seem, well, the gap there at 21.5 seconds. You still want to push and make sure that the car ahead feels the heat under the seat. It's just going to make those late mistakes that little bit more likable to happen. Chris Lauers here leads by 1 minute and 2 seconds ahead of Martin Deckens, who's built up an almost 6 seconds gap down to Philip Fliegen. And Benjamin de Pape is actually coming down very quickly, and that gap's been closing in the 222 machine, so it might still be on between B-Sim Racing and Duct Tape Racing Yellow for 3rd place in BLC2.
Fabrice Cornelis, BLC3, fastest lap of the race so far in that class.
Yeah, he's smashing it at the moment, isn't he? 14 seconds down to Cedric Wouters now. The deciding effort here from Cornelis. And as that is said, actually, Wouters matches, not only matches, he goes 2/10 quicker here, Edward.
Ooh. Track must be really coming down in temperature now. The car's a lot lighter on their feet as well, with less fuel on board as we come into the final 20 minutes of this 3rd round of the 2022 Virtual Belcar season. Really exciting to see all of these drivers pushing themselves to the absolute limits here at Le Mans. Wonderful circuit. It's given us some great racing so far tonight, but it's definitely not all over yet. I think Milan Phaetons is actually closing in on a car just up ahead of him. I think we might be seeing a battle for 5th place in that BLC3 class, you know, because Milan Phaetons is, I think, trying to reel in Hendrik de Grave.
So he is indeed, when looking at the lap times, although
actually Hendrik de Grave, I think, actually got ahead
the other way
of him.
around. Yeah, I would say that as well. I think it's been the other way around, because it seems that de Grave has been over 2 seconds faster on that final lap, or that last lap.
Must have been an overtake that we missed out on.
Let's see. I'm looking at it now. I don't think I can see anything really within the last few minutes here. So
Hendrik de Grave, slow down. That's allowed Milan Phaetons back through, Hassa. So all of a sudden one thing's changed and then it's changed the other way, and now all of a sudden the BMW is the car up into 5th place. I have to say, I do like the LEDs off of the oh my word, Hendrik de Grave, that was a bit of a surprising lunge up the inside, catching all of us off guard, as did it catch off Milan Phaetons. I do like those little red LED lights from the front end of the BMW. And there was a slowdown from Hendrik de Grave.
That's a really good job of clearing the slowdown quickly. And then from this sort of distance back, and that's why I was going on board to see, because he came from a mile back, flying in there. Maybe sort of had to. I think that was from out of necessity more than wanting to just send
I think
it
the
from that far back.
BMW as well of Milan Phaetons did break a little bit earlier because the Porsche ahead did come across into the braking zone.
Yeah, so it seemed, and she explains, and sometimes that's just what you do in those situations. You take evasive action. It looks like an absolute lunge from so far back. And the only thing you're basically trying to do is to not crash into the car ahead of you. Sometimes it looked like a bit of a rude overtake, maybe at first glance, but all the wiser after a second one, and it certainly wasn't as such here. Dirk Bouts comes into the pits. Chris Lauers is going to go through. And it's finally, might want to say here at this point of the race, Edward, it seems to have calmed down. So we're into the final 20 minutes here. The lead BLC1 battle separated by just under 7.5 seconds. Jonathan Poulet would have to pull off something special.
You have to say, though, Hasse, if it wasn't for those half spins and incidents befalling Valkyrie competition, they've had a couple of those this race. They would
have
really be up there, and they would be in the lead.
Yeah,
almost certainly in the lead. They've lost about if you combine them, 15, maybe even 20 seconds from those incidents.
Yeah.
And they could be clearing away ahead of our competition, but that hasn't been. They've, well, been involved in a few little moments, mostly of their own doing as well. The main ones just being touch of the grass coming out of Porsche curve section, tapping the tyre barriers, losing a little bit of aero, and then of course the most recent one, just what, 20-30 minutes ago, it was coming out of Touch Rouge, just losing the rear, giving a tap to the front end. So yeah, definitely not the race that Valkyrie competition were hoping for. A few incidents and accidents here and there that's really defined, I think it's fair to say, their evening tonight, Hasso. I'm sure you'll agree, but without them, who knows where we could have been seeing them. Definitely challenging for the lead, and maybe even comfortably, compared to Jimmy and Tunes in our large competition.
They could really have used those points as well. Now, of course, saying that it's not over yet, but in the position they're in at the moment, it's yeah. Again, you need something to happen for Jimmy and Tunes within the final 15 minutes, but Tunes has been so consistent here. He's made no mistakes whatsoever. Just gotta wonder about that car of Sandy Mitchell and Nilton Carvalho, and just how well they could have handled themselves in that. Well, because we saw it over the opening hour of the race or so. What a brilliant three-way battle for the lead in BLC 1. And you know, it is a bit of a what if, but you know, what could have been with that battle? It could have been very close. It could have been very exciting. It is very close. It's still underneath 10 seconds. And Tunes, by the way, is just extending. Or maybe it's just the delta being a little bit funky, but it's about 7.5 seconds. It seems relatively comfortable for Jimmy and Tunes.
Just looking at this as well, Jimmy and Tunes and our competition, if they win, well, this will be their second race victory of the season. First being the season opener at Spa. They finished second at Watkins Glen. They look on track if the next 15 minutes are going smoothly for them to win the third race of the season. Meanwhile, Valkyrie competition, they finished third at Spa, first at Watkins Glen, of course, and now look to be on track for a second. So both these two teams have going to try and make it a habit of coming onto the podium. 3 podiums from 3 races. And then, of course, Sim District Green at the very least, are trying to almost bounce back from the disappointment of Watkins Glen. They have a lot of pace in the tank, but just it didn't seem to work out for them in the end. Had a few moments here and there that saw them finish outside of the podium. Of course, the season opener was a little bit better. They finished in 3rd place overall on the BLC 1 class podium. Not 3rd place, actually, rather. No, they finished in 2nd place. So they had a good time of things out on track at the season opener. They're looking to make their second time onto the podium, but of course, it's still a long time to go in this race. All it takes is for one little miscalculation with a back marker, and you can see in the background so many cars waiting to go through. You're in fact for Simwell.be fast, waiting in the wings, as they were at Watkins Glen, that saw them take their first podium of the season as well. So don't discount that team from maybe trying to snag something right at the death.
No, this is a battle as well for 5th place. So both of these two machines, Milan Phaetons and QSR Racing Esports, and the Flemish Aston Martin, the 867. Both of them are going to want to do their utmost to get into the top 5. A new fastest lap there for Fabrice Cornelis in BLC 3. Personal best for Cedric Wouters, but he's still losing time, 14.5 seconds it's up to. Leandro Verle further 30 seconds down the road. De Grave up on Phaetons by about half a second here. That's, I think, is the closest pairing I have at the moment here, Edward. Oh, that's not gonna be much use on board with Milan Phaetons from that camera angle there. It's gonna be great, however, if we do it from Hendrik De Grave's car.
And we can see that BMW looming in the background. What an aggressive sort of picture that presents to Hendrik De Grave. I think for the moment, quite content just to sit in behind, isn't he, Milan Phaetons? Could have thought about maybe trying to go too wide into the Porsche curves. Thought better of it. Obviously, the BMW not as strong as the Aston through that particular section of track, as you can see by the image of the Beamer getting smaller and smaller as we exit that section for now. But then when we come on to the, what you, I guess, refer to as the middle sector, the Mulsanne, going all the way down from Tetra Rouge, probably through actually in towards Indianapolis, is where the BMW is at its strongest. Actually closing up through the chicanes as well, so Milan Phaetons is certainly not hanging about. Neither is the, I believe that's Philip Vliegen, is that just passing through? Looked like a duct tape racing Porsche. The traffic, of course, might have unsettled Hendrik De Grave just a touch now, as there's a bit of a switchback manoeuvre almost coming through. Not quite presenting itself for Milan Phaetons just yet, but it's all about waiting, biding your time, trying to pick your moment, and then when that moment presents itself, you've got to seize it with both hands. Just dipping a couple of words actually over that right hand side of the curb, which is quite an easy way to have the car spit off into the walls, but for Milan Phaetons, that's how he likes to drive the car, that's how he feels fastest. And now the good run out of Tetra Rouge, potentially he could be putting some pressure on into the first of the two get your words out, get your teeth back in, Ed. Into the first of the two Mulsanne chicanes, Sasser.
Yeah, and
no, he's not. He's lifted.
No, but
he's
it makes sense that it's wise racing here from Milan Phaetons. I don't think he's happy to stay behind for 10 seconds, but he's going to time his overtake to some part of the track where it's not easy for
in towards Indianapolis would be my bet.
Yeah, exactly. So he's gonna sit behind here until he's comfortable with coming through on the Flemish Aston. It's just gonna push him along, not even. He's just gonna sit there. Might also be a thing about wanting to conserve a bit of fuel in the tank. Had their last stop on their 27th lap of racing, and 3 laps behind. They were on lap 27, so that's a fair few laps ago by now, and they would probably want to make sure that they can go all the way to the end, but I think this is more a question of timing than anything else. And with the long legs of the BMW GT4 machine here, I think this is where we might see an attempt. I could be wrong, but it would make sense here. This is sort of where you can defend from within reason. Maybe waiting even down into the Porsche curves. He lifts off here as well. It's very early to lift off. He could have overtaken on numerous occasions.
This tells us, Hasta, that Milan Phaetons is playing the long game. He is going to sit behind and wait right up until the very last lap before making his move.
Yeah, he might just see that he's able to do it whenever and then make the sort of, the sprinter's decision in cycling terms and come around late as they come up towards the line. Of course, he's not gonna wait until they exit the final turn, but less earlier, if you will do as well any point when there'll be no real opportunities for De Grave to react to it. shows that it's not easy for him to gain that run down towards the Porsche curves. With all this, though, it might just get to the head of Hendrik de Grave at this point. It's a relatively stressful situation to be in here, isn't it? Oh, Edward, I'm sorry to just cut you off before you say anything, but there's been a crash for Jonathan Poulet in the second Mulsanne chicane. Heavy on the curbs. They're losing it all the way around. 180 though. Gets it running again. And actually, there's having been 7 seconds down, that again, that will have just eased the pressure off of Jimmy and Toons within the final minutes of the race now.
It's just not what they needed, is it? It's just not what the Poulet and Valkyrie competition needed. It's shows how hard they're pressing and pushing, but sometimes it gets a little bit too difficult. It's into the pits they come.
Into the pits. That's... Do they have damage from that? It's sort of surprising. But
yeah, maybe they miscalculated or something with the fuel.
6 minutes remaining. That's a rather large miscalculation, if that's the point. Or they just seem to have realized. They did take a short pit stop compared
maybe they
to...
took in too little amount of fuel as Olivier Boeltink.
That's true. That's true. Could have been, but Boeltink was in quite a lot later. So Boeltink's going to jump up into second place. That's a drive-through penalty. Oh. It's a drive-through on the incident points, I would believe.
I was just looking to see if race control has put anything out about...
That's not a race control. I think that's
or any stewards to put out anything. You can't see anything from race control, no.
That's just from the iRacing stewards, so to say. Dealt, I would imagine.
Oh dear, oh dear.
Yeah. That's certainly an interesting development here. 5 minutes from the end of the race, and a gift having been handed here to Olivier Boeltink. 6 seconds now separating Boeltink from Jonathan Poulet here. Philippe Fabert. Oh, someone's in the pits. Vatlet is in the pits at the moment.
And all of those spins has, so they counted as 2x loss of controls.
Yeah.
In addition to maybe, exceeding track limits going off the road and picking up a 1x. So all of those have added up. Not only have they lost them time, but they caused that penalty to come through and put them suddenly outside of the top two and now down into third, which is a huge blow for their championships when you consider that their main rivals on large competition are looking very comfortable to go ahead and win.
Absolutely. So, interestingly here as well, Edward, Benjamin de Papa has been closing the gap to Philip Fliegen consistently over the last few laps. His last lap here was a 4:03.31. That's exactly a second quicker than Fliegen. Put it a 4:04.32. Both
when you think about how damaged that car was,
yeah,
to get into a shot of potentially a third place finish, that's mega.
Indeed, and just gotta wonder if there will be the time for Benjamin de Papa to actually be able to get a move made.
I'm not sure about that. It might be a little bit tight.
I think he's gonna run on a road. It depends if we're on the final lap here as well. I don't think we are. It's going to be one more. No. It's going to be one more, yeah. One more lap for Jimmy and Toons. Will they have miscalculated too? I wouldn't expect it. Be very surprised to see them pitting in here. Of course, it wasn't a miscalculation as well for Valkyries. What was that drive-through?
For anyone who's unsure about the limit for the drive-through penalties, it's every 15 incident points. If you get another 15, you are disqualified from the server, so I don't think that's anything to worry about for these drivers, unless somehow Valkyrie competition managed to, just completely obliterate track limits and drive through the stands, then maybe that might see them with enough incident points, but other than that, I think they will be completely fine. Or as fine as you can be when you're down the order as much as they are after that incident, after those incidents this race. As we start now, the final lap has the white flag waving for Jimmy and Tunes. It will soon wave for Benjamin de Papa and Philip Vliegen, that battling pair that are getting closer and closer. That gap did just for a moment dip below the 2-second bracket. And now the slipstream is going to start to come into effect. Around about 1.8, 1.5 seconds is when you got a nice amount of tow. Of course, exaggerated by the fact that the straights are even longer here at Le Mans. That's going to really, really help out that 222 car.
Yeah, definitely. Just going to hop over and see. Don't need 2 seconds now. We'll make it onto that final lap as well. Only just. I won't take him a minute from here, will it? It cannot possibly. Don't think it will.
No, because the flag only comes out for the leader, so they will make it across the line. It's more when the leader comes across the line. So even if the time ticked over past 3 minutes now, they still would have to complete the lap because the leader has yet to complete the white flag lap.
3 hours.
Yeah, so it's based on when the leader finishes their white flag lap.
Yeah, definitely. That is right. A second and a half seconds. Yeah.
Here we go. Game on. Benjamin de Papa with a 4 minutes 2.9, fastest lap of their race so far. What a time to do it as well when they are chasing down.
They don't have the slipstream. They will have it. They will have it on this lap.
They brought out 0.2 of a second just through that one chicane, Hasse. 0.2 through one chicane. Benjamin is on a mission and is going to bring it down even further. Now it's going to be 1 second. 1 second as they come through Tetra Rouge, Hasse. Meanwhile, there's a battle with Milan Phaetons and Henrik de Grave. That gap is less than 1/10 of a second. Milan Phaetons is deciding now is the time to start to really turn the screws.
De Grave.
And there's been an incident. They're flashing their headlights. They were very wide coming out of Mulsanne corner, and the order has switched around. Henrik de Grave feeling very aggrieved. Let's have a look. Henrik down the inside. Henrik just moved left for me. Henrik was moving left across the front of Milan Phaetons.
Let's see. We'll see here on board with Milan Phaetons. Yeah, he comes across him. There's nowhere to go for Milan Phaetons in that situation. Cannot just disappear as they're too wide. No matter how hard Henrik de Grave wants him to back out of it, it's a second between the two. Now we're going to go back.
We're stuck though, Hassan. What do we look for?
Here.
Do we look at this battle or do we look for the leader when he's coming up to the line? Where is
I don't think de Grave will be able to get the better of Milan Phaetons, who seem to me to be the quicker of the two drivers, just sitting there behind for so long. And Benjamin de Papa has to make this overtake stick on this lap. Of course, we're going to keep an eye on Jimmy and Tunes for when he is going to cross the line as well.
Through the Porsche curve soon. If not now. Let's have a look. He's coming through the final chicane now, Hasse.
He's going to take flag, isn't he? And win it for an Arch competition. And with that, they're going to take the lead of the championship as well. What a win. Beautiful one indeed. For Jimmy and Tunes.
Dominating drive on our competition there.
Alice Diegues as well. Brilliant drive. Here comes Olivier Boultink. We're going to keep our eyes here, though, on Benjamin de Papa and Philip Vliegen for a second.
So,
Olivier Boultink.
Straight where the move is going to be made. Olivier Boultink is coming through, but here we must focus on this battle.
Yeah.
He's going to go which way, around the outside, around the inside. Which way is he going to find it? It's a very wide stretch. You can try and make it work. De Papa being sent all the way around the outside line through Indianapolis. Is he going to get it stick? They go side by side. He can't quite get the move to stick. Instead, looks to the inside for the left-hander. Can't find a nose width up the inside. Has to back out yet again. And now they come throh Arnage for the final time of asking here. And the third round of this Virtual Belcar 2022 Championship. It's going right down to the wire for the podium here in BLC2. You are absolutely right, Hasse. He has got a monstrous run out of the slowest corner on the circuit and now being sent to the outside line by Philip Ligon. He really wants to defend for all he's worth, but we've seen so many times drivers making it work side by side. Has he got just enough? No, they do have contact through the Porsche curves, and I think that is enough to see Philip Ligon hang on to third place. It's going to be close. Benjamin De Papa all out of sorts, trying to find the right line to get a good run, tapping the grass just slightly as Chris Lammers wins the BLC2 class. What a drive from him. They're still going at it. This is going to be right into the final chicane. So they go for it and just enough on the inside. He has to send it now. They go side by side. And he's got it done into the final chicane, but he runs across the track. He's going to get a slowdown. He's going to have to give up that position. Philip Ligon pits him around, does a pit maneuver across the end. That was
so unnecessary.
It was not needed at all, but I'm not sure what the stewards are going to make of that, because of course Benjamin De Papa was going to need to serve a slowdown penalty, was going to have to give up. He lost the track, he left the track, he gained an advantage. The podium for BLC2 finishes in dramatic fashion. BLC3 is still going, I believe, as is BLC4. So we'll expect to see Fabrice Cornelis come through with damage all over his car. Huge amount of damage. What on earth is happening? Can he crawl
across the line yet? Look at this.
He's gonna just be able to crawl across the line. He's got enough time, but that is huge drama. What on earth happened to Fabrice Cornelis? Cedric Wouters, he's going to be able to get close, but not close enough. Fabrice Cornelis barely hangs on. The car's in bits as he drags it over the finish line now to secure the BLC class victory, BLC3 class victory. What a drive from Simtag 80, making it 3 wins from 3, but in dramatic fashion right at the end there. What on earth transpired in those dying few moments? Well, we'll have to find out later, as our focus will shift to BLC4, as that was Fabrice Cornelis coming across the line. Here we go to Nicolas Rubillard. Arnage competition, they didn't quite have enough for pole position, but their pace throughout the race was sufficient enough to get the better of AC Motorsport. Thomas Robin and Corentin Guinez behind the wheel there. That was through the final that was through the Porsche curves for the final time. Big contact with the wall, and another car quickly rejoined the circuit unsafely, I have to say. So dear, oh dear. That was a lot of damage, and then the car not happy at all, as Nicolas Rubillard does come across the line to secure the BLC4 class victory with their personal best effort in the race, a 4:26.0. But Corentin Guinez, pole position, he's still going to be disappointed. I think you'll have to imagine, though, with a second place, what could have been, as he set the fastest lap of the race. He's going to be happy with that, at least a small consolation prize, but the big honours went the way of his main rival in the championship, Nicolas Rubillard, who secures Arnage competition's, I believe, 3rd victory in that class. Dominant drive for the number 18 TCR. Dominant drive for the number 1 BLC1 car, as Arnage competition basically bookend the two classes, winning the first class BLC1 and the 4th class BLC4. But Hasta, why don't you take us through our BLC1 results?
With pleasure indeed, Edward. Arnage competition, as you said, wins it with the number 1 car ahead of Sim District Vibe eSports GT3 Green on the 43 or 45 machine. My apologies. And Valkyrie competition with the 77 and the late drive-through penalty drama there in BLC1 with the podium places. SimWorld.be 4th and 5th with the fast and rapid, that is. And then Traxxas by JWS Classic in 6th ahead of Sim Formula Europe, Valkyrie eSports Rookies, then Team Beta Brab, Flemish Sim Sports White, Mac Challenge by DB1, Ignium Motorsports Blaze, then PSR by RPM in 13th and 14th. There was the non-finishing and very, very unlucky 145 Sim District Vibe eSport GT3 Red Machine. Could have been so much more for them indeed. Edward, talk us through BLC2.
Thank you very much, Hester. And yes, ART Sim Racing. What a race. They gave us good strategy that saw them come out of the pits for the final time in the lead. And then, of course, well, we'll come to what happened further down the order later on. But Flemish Sim Sports yellow by Baracco coming through in second place in BLC2. Good drive. A little bit under the radar, you have to say, for Flemish, but still a good drive nevertheless. Duct Tape Racing yellow there in third, fending off BSim Racing, but with a dramatic end that might be looked at by the stewards, with a BSim Racing leaving the track, rejoining ahead, and then getting the spin around. Very intriguing, but they, of course, finished in fourth place. Very good effort considering the sheer amount of damage they were holding over much of the race. GTE Racing by Red Ant, hugely disappointing for them. They were leading, dominating the race for much of the proceedings, but unfortunately for them, one little internet blip out was enough to see them drop way down the order. Still finishing in fifth, though, a good result, a good haul of points. Then Team Alpha Brab higher time. They're the number 9 car finishing in sixth. Not too far, actually, ahead of Duct Tape Racing Red. They're in seventh, just, 9 seconds. Not a huge deal over a 3-hour race, that's for certain. And then Dynamics Racing Simulators, 1 lap down, finishing in not in 65th place. No, they're the 65 car, finishing in 8th place. That'd take some doing to finish in 65th place in a grid of 38 cars. But Hassa, why don't you do the honours of running us through the BLC 3 class?
With a huge amount of drama on the last lap, reminiscent of what happened to maybe Lewis Hamilton in Britain. I think there was a Silverstone a few years back with the puncture.
2 years ago.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, exactly. Sort of the same sort of scenario. Had they had more time, the Traxxas car, they might have won it 3.5 seconds after that late incident for the Simtech E team, but they do win it in the number 2 car. A 3 out of 3 possible so far this season. Traxxas by JWS Motorsports and the 25 car gets second, ahead of Anage Competition and the 100 BMW. Traxxas by JWS Motorsports and the sister car, the 23, comes in fourth place. Then QSR Racing eSports, Flemish Sim Sports Black, Ignium Motorsports Spark, they're in 7th place, ahead of BSim Racing G. ART Sim Racing 2 in 9th, ahead of Decipit Racing Team. Sim District Vibe, the AMR GT4 machine, and then RP Motorsports GT4 in 12th. And with that, it's over to Edward yet again for a great but short run through the 4-car BLC4 field.
Yeah, our Anage Competition didn't quite have enough pace over 1 lap to put it on pole, but their race was well managed and well fought to take the BLC4 class victory ahead of their nearest rivals, AC Motorsport eSports, and the dual French effort that sadly wasn't quite enough to win on home soil, but they're still going to be very happy with a good second place. Flemish Sim Sports Red by Viraco, rounding out the podium with P Sim Racing by FRT, number 19 car, rounding out the field there in fourth place. But with that, Hassa, I think we have several drivers lining up to have a chat with us. So why don't you do us the honours of conducting the post-race interviews?
Yes, indeed. And we shall have the honours of speaking to Chris Lowers in here from the winning 55 ART Sim Racing in a car in BLC2. Chris, welcome to the comms booth. Congratulations on a brilliant result here tonight. A brilliant race. Got really exciting, maybe even too exciting at times. How was it like out there with the 4 classes on track and all these things to take into consideration while racing the cars in your own class?
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for the introduction. It was very sweaty. After my first stint, I stepped out quite wet. But car-wise on the track, it was, especially the GT3s. The straight line speed, of course, of this Porsche is so crazy. had to take into consideration to stay in the back and to bring the car home. And luckily, that is eventually what we did. So very pleased with the result. Indeed.
Yeah, and understandably so, it has to be said. Were you expecting it to be a kind of race where you were able to challenge, given that it seemed like the GT racing car had such a great pace in qualifying there? Or were you just expecting the race to kind of have to come to you for it to work out?
I hoped that I could stay in the tow of the GTE team. But due to some minor hiccups and of course some traffic, I lost the connection with P1. And eventually the gap became larger. So I hope to stay within slipstream range, but unfortunately that didn't happen. And very unlucky, by the way, for P1 team. I think it was a disconnect, which is super unfortunate because they had a brilliant race. And we ourselves made a mistake as well with the second pit stop because we brought along we didn't bring enough fuel for our last stint, so it was close there as well.
And Chris, next time we're gonna be seeing you on track is gonna be at August 26th there at Barcelona. What is your thoughts about visiting the Circuit de Catalunya for the 4th round of the championship?
Actually, I think I will hand the steering wheel to Matthias for Barcelona, and perhaps the next time you will see me will be on Circuit Solar for the 24 hours.
Well, that makes sense as well. Well, it's going to be a challenge as well in December. We'll be looking forward to seeing you back here. Until then, Chris, a great congratulations here from me and Edward in the booth. And before we let you go and celebrate, is there anyone you'd like to give a thanks or a shout out to?
Yeah, of course, to my other teammate, Mr. Robin Maas, and the whole team for participating in the practice sessions up towards the race.
Indeed, thank you for joining us as well for this post-race chat. Again, congratulations, enjoy the evening, and until next time, yeah, take care.
Thank you, man. Have a nice evening.
So that was Chris Lauwersen, the race winner here in BLC2, and I think Edward will be ready with Jimmy and Toons, the race overall winner and class winner, of course, in BLC1 here in just about a blink of an eye.
Hopefully, if we can bring him into the commentary booth. Don't have those permissions, sadly, so I'm going to have to rely on my good friend. There we go. Jimmy and Tunes joins us in the comms box, pilot of the number 1 Arnage competition entry, class winner, an overall winner in BLC 1. Congratulations, mate. That was a pretty exciting race. The latter part looked relatively straightforward, but I'm certain that the first part was anything but.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, guys. It was super fun, actually, in the start. We got some slowdowns to clear, and it took like 5 seconds to clear, so thanks iRacing. But yeah, it was super fun to come back and then to pull the lead and force the others to the mistake. It was super nice, honestly.
Yeah, just talk us through though, especially the start of the race and as well qualifying. Your confidence coming into this must have been pretty high when you on pole by a considerable margin. That must have given you a lot of confidence coming into this.
Yeah, exactly. But we all know that qualifying in Le Mans is not that important because all the straights, it's easy to follow. Even if you are 1 second slower, you can follow easy. So yeah, the main focus was to be clean in the race and bring it home.
Yeah, and also a big story of this was actually some of the practice sessions coming into this. Some of the other teams were looking quite strong around there. Did you have any of your eyes on some of the competition? Any drivers and teams that you were particularly worried about?
Yeah, obviously we are fighting with Valkyrie, so we know that they are fast and actually we know that they do sometimes mistake, and they did again on this race. So I guess it will come back to them in the future. They will fix that and we will have some fight in the next races for sure.
Yeah, it seems to go one way and the other. It seems that one race, one car has mistakes, then the other, because obviously we saw, I think last time out, you were able to properly iron out the mistakes that came through at Watkins Glen, and you're looking to be in good stead for the rest of the season now?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we we always finished on the podium this season, so the goal is to continue with that and to continue to lead the championship until the end.
Yeah, definitely. Well, best of luck, mate, to you and all of your Onage competition teammates. Before we say goodbye to you, of course, congratulations on your class victory. But as well, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to here on the broadcast?
Yeah, of course, everyone that cheers for us and all the sponsors, and of course, Anash Competition for the work, and you guys as well for the work that you do every time.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. It's good to have a chat with you, and best of luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you. See you next time.
So that was Jimmy and Tunes joining us in the commentary booth, and now we have a couple of drivers to have a chat with. I think you have just brought in Nuno Henriquez, who is, of course, pilot of the Arnage competition, the other Arnage competition entry in the BLC4 class, their class victors. So why don't you have a chat with them now?
Yes, very much so. Thank you for joining us, Nuno. Welcome to the booth, and congratulations on a strong race win at Le Mans here. Very competitive BLC4 field, despite only being 4 cars. I take it you were kept on your toes throughout the race.
Hi guys, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that is true. I mean, the qualify was not the best one. It wasn't bad, but as we know, Le Mans is always about draft. So whoever got the most draft will get a better qualify. Our objective was to kind of just manage the race, to stay a little bit behind of any type of trouble. The first stint was a bit harsh for us. We took a slowdown right in the beginning, so it sent us to the back of the field. And AC was pretty strong in the first stint. So we tried to put our strategy up, and I think it played quite well because we were able to get in front by the second stint, and from there it was just manage the gap. But congrats to the other teams. AC as well. Quarantine had a huge pace. It was quite nice.
And with a race like this, 4 cars or 4 classes of cars on track, being in the slower class of the 4, I take it that it's also quite a thing about looking quite a lot in the rear view mirror and really being patient and sort of letting people come through at times in order to not lose too much time yourself as well.
Yeah, that is true. I don't think the GT3s are a big problem because they are much faster than us. But like the Porsche Cups and the GT4s, it's a bit different because Porsche Cups, they are really fast on the straights. But if you get at the corner at the same time, it might be a bit tricky. And the same with the GT4. So, but it's pretty manageable, I would say. But yeah, always looking at the mirror.
And looking at the championship standings coming into this round, you will have taken a good bite out on Flemish, on which you were, of course, level on points coming into the round here. Any thoughts on the final rounds of the championship, starting with Barcelona in August?
I mean, yeah, Barcelona will try to manage as we tried this race, but as for the teams, of course, our objective is to do the best points that we can. But I think if Quarantine stays, I mention him in particular because he was like with a really good pace today. So I think if he continues, AC might have a good run up for fighting with us as well.
So it could be a 3-way fight in a 4-class field.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty incredible. Thank you for joining us, Nuno. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Congratulations on a strong win here on the most legendary of tracks. And before we let you go and celebrate, is there anyone you'd like to give a thanks or a shout out to?
I want to say thanks to all of you that had the time to be here and to be broadcasting, etc., and everyone who watched the race as well, and Arnage for providing us the ability to race.
Well, indeed, again, thanks for taking the time to chat away here, Nuno. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to get the chance to talk to you again. I actually won't be around because I'm in Spain for the round in Spain, which is actually quite funny. I'll be in La Rioja, but I will be back later in the season, and with hopes of getting the chances to talk to you again then.
Likewise, thank you. Have a good night, you all.
Cheers. So, with that said, Edward, I think that's going to be the last of our interviewees for tonight. Unless we can squeeze in a flying Philip here at the end, which I think we very much can. Philip Vegan, Edward May, take us away.
Yeah, Philip, that was a dramatic end to the race. I'm sure you will definitely agree. Right at the death there, where for a moment we thought you'd lost out on the podium, but then, of course, the 222 ran wide off of the track and had to give up the position. I think there might be a little bit looking at from the pit maneuver at the end, but to be fair, I think it was more the stewards will think that it sorted itself out because they were probably going to finish behind you anyway with the penalty. But just talk us through those dramatic last few laps, first of all.
Yeah, we decided to do a double stint in the end on the tires, and the fronts were just not gripping anymore at like 25% left. But yeah, the last lap, he tried to move in the last chicane, and he overshoots it, tries to get his slowdown away right in front of us by basically brake checking us. I just couldn't do anything. I wanted to go past, but he blocked away, so I gave him a little gentle nudge.
Absolutely, a little love tap as you were passing by to take the podium. It's all fair, I'm sure, but as well before that, there was a lot of good battling coming in towards Indianapolis and Arnage, and also the Porsche curves.
Yeah, tried to hold position. It wasn't easy on the tires. It was struggling, and we didn't have the pace those guys had for sure. But we got lucky with our gamble, I think.
Talked about before as well, because I think we saw you in a bit of a fight all up and down the field, didn't you? Trying to scrap to get inside that top three.
Yeah, in practice I used to have the pace to basically follow, but today it wasn't working out. But trying to hang on with the Flemish car, but they were just too fast. Some traffic gave like a 1 second gap, and the next corner it was 1.2, and slowly losing the slipstream. So was struggling. We spinned 2 times as well. I spinned in the first stint, just a stupid mistake trying to fuel save and shifting down and releasing the clutch and spinning around. And Lawrence going a bit wide in the second stint on the exit of the last chicane and put it in the wall. Luckily, no damage, so we could continue.
Well, this is also, don't forget, your first podium of this season for the team. And is this going to be a sign of things to come? Do you think you can maybe bag a couple more at the end of the season?
We will try. Like normally I'm driving with Ronnie Heyman, but he's on holidays. He's in Croatia, nice and warm. And Lawrence stepped over from the other team and helped us out this weekend. So I hope we can, yeah. But we need some luck to get in the top 3. I think we lack a little bit of pace compared to the others.
Well, we hope either that you get a little bit more pace or a little bit more luck out on track next time out at Barcelona. We'll love to see you there. Before we say goodbye to you, though, this is the final interview of the evening. Is there anybody you would like to give a shout out to here on the broadcast?
My teammates, Lawrence, Ronnie, Glenn, and Christoph, who drove for the other team tonight, and our sponsors, Philips Vape Shop, Lange Wouters Regeltechniek, and Speculage Heinz. So that's all. Thanks for the interview.
No problem. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in about a month's time in August at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya.
Okay, see you then. Bye.
So there we go, Hasse. Philip Vliegen had the honour of being our final interview of the evening, and that's really all we have time for tonight. It's been a really exciting race evening here at Le Mans. It certainly didn't disappoint. It lived up to all the hype, and well, what can we look forward to in in Barcelona, Hassa?
A lot of the same. I think a lot of really close racing. I think Barcelona is going to be an interesting track. I haven't seen that many races that include this many classes there. It's going to be interesting to see just how the track lends itself to this sort of racing. I think it's going to be really great. It's usually a really good track for slower cars that are sort of more dependent on the mechanical grip, that can race close. I think we're going to be in for a good one. It's a track that has a tarnished reputation as being a bit of a boring one for racing, but that's in terms of Formula One and not in terms of these GT machines. So I'm except for the fact that I'm not going to be around to commentate on it, I'm probably going to be watching it from a sunny terrace in the northern Spain. Already dreaming myself away there. I'm looking forward to it, to be honest. I'm going to be sad I'm not going to be commentating it anyways. But I'll be looking forward to watching it for sure, and I think it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, definitely. Really well. So thank you everyone who has joined us here on the broadcast, chatting away in the YouTube chat, liked and, of course, subscribe to the Virtual Belcar YouTube channel. It's been a real pleasure to bring you all of the action here from a wonderful third round of the championship here at Le Mans. But all that we have time to say is goodbye, take care, stay safe, and we'll see you all next time.